Chapter 679. Send them to the bridal chamber. The wedding nanny's voice brought Ning Jing back to her senses. She had long prepared for the bridal chamber. She drugged Tang Li unscrupulously, but it didn't mean that she was a loose woman. She had already given Tang Li such a big advantage. She would never give him any more. Suddenly, Tang Li took her hand. His hand was warm, thick and rough, giving Ning Jing a wonderful feeling. They had made love last night, but this was the first time they held hands. Ning Jing subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but Tang Li held it more tightly. Ning Jing couldn't see Tang Li's face because of the red veil. She thought that Tang Li must be looking at her at this time. Oh, look at young Master Tang. You can't hold hands. The matchmaker suddenly slapped Tang Li's hand away. Ning Jing withdrew her hand in time. There was a feeling of emptiness in her heart, but she ignored it directly. It's time to call him master. Mrs. Tang reminded her with a smile. She was very happy. Once her son got married, she would be the old man's woman, and Tang Zijin would be the old master. Yes, yes. Isn't this servant speaking too fast? Master, don't worry. When you get to the bridal chamber, you can hold hands however you want. Before entering the bridal chamber, you can only carry or hold each other, but you can't hold hands. The matchmaker reminded them with a smile. She took the red silk and stuffed it into Tang Li's hand. Hold it tight. She gave the other end of the silk to Ning Jing. Hold it tight. Follow your husband. Ning Jing did as she was told. She could feel the strength of the other end of the silk. Tang Li seemed to be holding it very tightly. Because of the matchmaker's teasing, there was already a commotion around. Ning Jing had been waiting for Tang Li to speak, but Tang Li didn't say anything from beginning to end. This was not like that guy's character. What was he doing? What trick did he want to play? Ning Jing was curious, but she remained calm and collected. Come, the groom is leading the bride into the bridal chamber. Under the guidance of the matchmaker, Tang Li walked in front and Ning Jing followed behind. From the side door of the main hall, they went all the way to Tang Li's Yingxue house. Mrs. Tang and Tang Zijin went to host the wedding banquet. Long Feiyi accompanied Han Yunxi in the crowd to join in the fun. Normally, after Tang Li sent the bride to the bridal chamber, he should come out to attend the banquet. However, after half a day, Tang Li did not appear. Although everyone was curious, no one dared to ask. As for the disturbance in the bridal chamber at night, probably no one would dare to disturb them. After the banquet began, the originally quiet Tang sect became lively again. However, Crouching Dragon Peak was too high up, so the sounds below could not be heard. On the contrary, on Huilong Peak, where Aunt Ru was, she could hear the noise but could not see it. Aunt Ru sat alone on the cliff as she tried her best to look around. Unfortunately, she couldn't see a thing. She'd even prepared a custom-made dress for Tang Li's wedding, but it turned out to be useless in the end. Listening to the noise in the distance, Aunt Ru felt very uncomfortable. Unfortunately, there was no one to talk to. She felt a little regretful in her heart. Although it was lively outside, the bridal chamber was silent. After entering the bridal chamber, there were many things to do, such as lifting the veil, drinking cross-cupped wine, and so on. However, after Ning Jing sat down on the bed, Tang Li said to the matchmaker, "You can go out now." Sect Master, the matchmaker was about to explain when Tang Li gave her a big red packet. The matchmaker smiled. Okay, I won't disturb you." She was already at the door, but added, "Sect Master, the bride must be tired from the journey." Speaking of this, the matchmaker smiled more ambiguously. "Take it easy. There will be plenty of time in the future. Don't tire her out." Ning Jing suddenly clenched her hands. Fortunately, the red veil covered her face. Otherwise, the matchmaker would probably be killed by her eyes. In fact, the matchmaker was innocent. She knew nothing about the past between Ning Jing and Tang Li. She was really worried about Ning Jing. Generally, after the bridegroom sent the bride to the bridal chamber, he would go out to drink and would be busy until very late. It was just past noon, but Tang Li stayed in the room and did not go out. When was he going to go out? Tomorrow morning. It would be strange if the bride was not tired after such a long time in the afternoon and evening. The bride was a young and tender flower, while Tang Li was in the prime of his life. Moreover, he was a martial arts practitioner, so how could the bride withstand his torment? Tang Li did not say anything. He waved his hand and motioned for the matchmaker to go out. The matchmaker was also helpless. Finally, she said, "Remember to drink the sweet red date and lotus seed soup. From then on, the husband and wife will be as sweet as honey. You will have a child early." Ning Jing clenched her fists more tightly. Tang Li still waved his hand very patiently and let the matchmaker go. This time, the matchmaker was finally willing to leave and help them close the door. Tang Li seemed to be worried. He walked over and bolted the door from the inside. Hearing the sound, Ning Jing's heart inexplicably tightened. Damn it, she had clearly made very thorough preparations, so why was she still nervous? Soon, she heard Tang Li's footsteps. He walked towards her step by step. This bastard. Why didn't he go out in broad daylight? What kind of trick did he want to play? Ning Jing lowered her eyes and remained calm. Soon, she saw Tang Li standing in front of her. He was wearing a pair of black boots with golden edges. He was low-key and luxurious. Ning Jing wanted to lift the veil and take off the phoenix coronet and rosy cloak. She had worn these complicated things for several days and her neck was about to break. However, she could not move. She was afraid that Tang Li would find something to use against her and make things difficult for her. She sat and waited for him to speak. Helplessly, he said nothing. He sat beside her and pulled the other end of the red silk. The room was silent. The two of them just sat there. After waiting for a long time, Tang Li still did not speak. Cold smile appeared on Ning Jing's lips. She thought that Tang Li wanted her to speak. There was no way. If he wanted to wait like this, she would be very happy to accompany him. Suddenly, Tang Li gently tugged on the red silk. Ning Jing, who was holding the other end of the red silk, immediately noticed the movement. The contempt at the corner of her mouth deepened, but she did not show it. Unexpectedly, Tang Li increased his strength bit by bit. It looked like he was going to pull her over. Ning Jing did not want to play tug-of-war with him. Just as the red silk was pulled tight, she suddenly let go. The red silk was hit on Tang Li's body. A faint paw sound could be heard. Ning Jing snickered and pretended that nothing had happened. She sat there quietly. However, Tang Li did not make a fuss about it. He still did it quietly. What kind of medicine did this guy have up his sleeve? Ning Jing began to feel a little nervous. After all, this was the Tang sect. It was his territory. She could only deal with changes by remaining unchanged. Unexpectedly, the two of them sat like this for 2 hours. Ning Jing's butt was a little numb. She could not help but imagine Tang Li's appearance and expression. Was this bastard still staring at her? She was troubled by a question. Why did the bride have to wear a red veil, but the groom did not? In fact, Tang Li did not look at her at all. Although he was sitting, he was leaning on the high pillow beside him and leaning lazily. He supported his head with one hand and closed his eyes to take a nap. He was sure that if he did not make a sound, Ning Jing would not dare to do anything. He was exhausted from the journey. He had to take a good rest in the afternoon. Only then would he have the energy to subdue this woman at night. One was sitting upright, the other was leaning lazily, one was nervous, and the other was sleeping. The quiet and beautiful afternoon passed just like that. When night fell, Tang Li lazily opened his eyes and sat up straight to stretch. Ning Jing secretly paid attention to the movements around her and became alert again. Tang Li got up and rubbed his stomach as he walked to the table. He was hungry. He finished the 20,000 red date and lotus seed sweet soup in no time. Bastard! Ning Jing cursed in a low voice. She had been hungry for a long time. It looked like Tang Li was planning to waste her time. She could not sit still and wait for death. A cold glint flashed past her eyes and she shouted, "Ouch, it hurts. My stomach hurts." It was their wedding night and she was sick. What could he do to her? She covered her stomach with both hands and curled up, shouting, "My stomach hurts, help, help me." Tang Li looked over suspiciously and his lips curled into a cold sneer. However, he quickly put on his act and rushed to Ning Jing. At this moment, Ning Jing happened to remove the red veil. "My stomach hurts, She shouted halfway and suddenly became quiet. God, what did she just see? She saw that the room was filled with red roses. It was simply a sea of flowers. On the empty space in front of the couch, candles were lit into a large heart shape. Inside, her favorite white daisies were placed in the shape of the word Jing. Ning Jing was stunned and forgot to put on her act. Cold and quiet, she had rushed all the way from one commerce hall to get married. But why was there such care and surprise hidden in this wedding room? Tang Li, do you know that I've long given up and treated it as a wedding in this lifetime? Ning Jing looked at Tang Li in disbelief. Under the candlelight, Tang Li's eyes reflected the shadows of the flowers in the room and also her shadow. His eyes were affectionate and gentle like water. Seeing the shock and emotion in Ning Jing's eyes, Tang Li was very satisfied, but he pretended not to notice anything and asked anxiously, "What's wrong with your stomach? Why does it hurt?" Ning Jing then regained her senses and hurriedly continued to put on her act. "It hurts a lot. I can't take it anymore. Let me lie down, all right?" Tang Li did not say anything and hurriedly helped Ning Jing take off her phoenix coronet and helped her lie down on the couch to tuck her in. "Have you caught a cold? Or did you eat something bad?" As Tang Li asked, he hurriedly went to get some hot water. "Drink some water first. I'll get a doctor." Ning Jing had not drunk a drop of water the whole day and was waiting for the water to drink. She drank and said, "No, maybe my period is coming, so it hurts a lot. I'll be fine after a night's rest." This trick was simply an insult to him. A sly look flashed in Tang Li's eyes and he pretended not to understand. "Period? What kind of illness is that? Is it serious? I'd better go get a doctor. I'm worried about you." No matter how open-minded Ning Jing was, she would still feel awkward. Tang Li was such a playboy. How could he not understand this kind of thing? He must be faking it. Don't think that she could not see that the decoration of this room was indeed very meticulous, but there was an ulterior motive. Trying to deceive her. No way. "I'm not sick, it's..." Ning Jing motioned for Tang Li to come closer and wanted to explain to him. Who knew that she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach, so painful that she suddenly broke out in cold sweat. What was going on? Chapter 680. What was going on with Ning Jing? Her stomachache was not completely faked. She had just secretly taken a poison that she had hidden in her mouth. This poison was called Haunted Night. Once taken, she would have a stomachache at night. However, it was only a slight pain and was not fatal. After 3 nights of pain, the poison would dissipate. After the poison dissipated, the person would be very weak and would need to rest in bed for a month. She had long expected that Tang Li would find a doctor for her, so she had made sufficient preparations. Even if the doctor really came, he would not be able to find the specific cause of the illness after taking her pulse. Anyway, she planned to recuperate in bed for this month and be served by others. With Auntie Shuang watching over her and her family coming to visit, Tang Li could not do anything to her. The person who sold her the poison clearly said that after taking the poison, she would only feel a slight pain. Why did her internal organs hurt as if they were being cut by knives? She was not afraid of pain, but this kind of pain was simply unbearable. In just a short while, she was already sweating all over. Looking at Ning Jing's pale face and trembling lips, Tang Li's eyes flashed with contempt. He thought to himself, this shameless woman really knows how to act. If he had not fallen for her tricks before, he would definitely have fallen for it. He leaned closer and asked curiously, if it's not an illness, what is it? Ning Jing did not answer. To be exact, she did not have the strength to explain to him. She pressed her hands tightly on her stomach, hoping to relieve some of the pain. Let's call a doctor over. Tang Li seemed to be very anxious, but in fact, he did not even want to call a doctor over. Ning Jing was just pretending. It was useless to call a doctor over. He was very willing to slowly waste time with her tonight. Come, drink some more water. I'll call a doctor. He gently helped Ning Jing sit up. As soon as Ning Jing sat down, she immediately fell to the side and curled up in pain. Her acting was so good. Tang Li decided to accompany her to the end. Long Fei Yi had already ordered him to settle Ning Jing within a year. He decided to use warm tactics to torment this slut. Tang Li quickly pulled Ning Jing up. Jing Jing, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, okay? Ning Jing was in so much pain that she felt weak all over. She couldn't help but collapse into Tang Li's arms. The warmth in Tang Li's arms immediately dispersed the coldness in her body. However, she was not greedy. She gritted her teeth and quickly struggled out. Lying in the bedding, she held her stomach tightly and did not say a word. Jing, wait, I'll call the doctor right away. When Tang Li opened the door and came out, he saw Aunt Shuang pacing back and forth in the courtyard. Tang! Aunt, son-in-law. Aunt Shuang was still calm. She thought that the young lady's plan should have succeeded. Tang Li must have come out to summon the doctor. Unexpectedly, Tang Li glanced at her and went back in without saying anything. What was going on? Aunt Shuang became uneasy. Just as she was about to approach, 2 shadow guards immediately appeared and stopped her. Inside the room, Ning Jing saw that Tang Li had returned and finally breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that he had called the doctor. She was saved. Tang Li still poured warm water and knelt in front of the bed. He gently coaxed, Jing Jing, drink some water. The doctor will be here soon. Ning Jing turned her face away and ignored him. Tang Li was very patient. He climbed onto the bed and knelt in front of Ning Jing. Jing Jing, don't be like this. If you do this, my heart will ache. I know we didn't have a good relationship before, but since I, Tang Li, married you, I will definitely cherish you. Jing Jing, give me a chance, okay? Ning Jing was cold to begin with. When she heard this, she got goosebumps all over her body. She turned her head and looked elsewhere. Tang Li caught up with her and held the cup in front of her with both hands. Jing Jing, take it that I'm begging you. Drink some water, okay? Her stomach hurt more and more. Her internal organs seemed to be stirred together. Ning Jing was in so much pain that she was about to cry. She buried her head in the blankets and her frail body couldn't help but tremble. Tang Li was having a lot of fun. His lips curled into a devilish smile. He moved closer ambiguously and forcefully pulled Ning Jing's hand to slap his face. Jing Jing, hit me. As long as you're willing to see a doctor, you can hit me however you want. After he said that, he really pulled her hand and slapped his face repeatedly. Ning Jing really wanted to cry. When did she say that she didn't want to see a doctor? Every time Tang Li pulled her hand and slapped his face, her stomach would hurt for a while. She wanted to break free, but unfortunately, she didn't have any strength. Jing Jing, are you happier now? As long as you're happy, I'll do anything you want. I really want to spend the rest of my life with you. That night, although. As Tang Li spoke, he pretended to smile helplessly before continuing, no matter what, I'll take responsibility until the end. Jing Jing, I, Tang Li, will only love you in this lifetime. We'll live on Crouching Dragon Peak in the future and forget about all the complicated worldly affairs. We'll plant daisies all over Crouching Dragon Peak, okay? When autumn comes, the mountains and plains will be filled with your favorite flowers. I won't do anything. I'll sit with you in the sea of flowers every day and watch the sunrise and sunset. Okay. Ning Jing didn't react at all. Tang Li asked again, Jing Jing, give me a chance. Fall in love with me, okay? Finally, Ning Jing slowly raised her head. Her face was covered in tears. Tang Li was shocked. He didn't expect that this woman, who seemed difficult to deal with, could be settled with just a few flowery words. He had to admit that he was quite disappointed. Unexpectedly, Ning Jing suddenly burst into tears. Boo-hoo. Tang Li, why isn't the doctor here yet? She was in so much pain that she was about to die. The corners of Tang Li's mouth twitched a few times. Just as he was about to speak, Ning Jing suddenly cried out again and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Then, she fainted. Tang Li was shocked. Only then did he realize that Ning Jing wasn't faking it. She was really in pain. This black blood was probably poisoned. Hey! Ning Jing, what's wrong? Don't scare me. Hey, wake up. Damn it. Tang Li shook Ning Jing a few times, but Ning Jing didn't react at all. He touched her hand and realized that her hand was unusually cold. He tested her breathing and was shocked to find that her breath was very weak. It could even be said that her breath was drifting. Ning Jing, we haven't settled our debts yet. If I dare to die, I won't let you off. Tang Li warned angrily. He didn't realize that he was panicking. Suddenly, Ning Jing retched a few times. Blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. It was black blood again. Tang Li was completely shocked. Without saying anything, he immediately got off the bed and ran out. He even forgot to put on his shoes. When Auntie Shuang saw him coming out, she wanted to go up to him. However, Tang Li knocked her aside and used his qigong to fly away. He went straight to the main hall of Crouching Dragon Peak. Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, where are you? Sister-in-law, come out. Sister-in-law, help. Sister-in-law. Tang Li shouted as he rushed into the main hall. There was only one banquet table in the main hall. Tang Zijin and Madame Tang sat at the head of the table, followed by Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Seeing Tang Li come in barefooted and disheveled, everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? Tang Li, what's wrong with you? Tang Zijin asked sternly. Madame Tang quickly got up. Ollie, what's wrong? Did that brat Ning Jing bully you? Tang Li ignored her and rushed to Han Yunxi. Sister-in-law, Ning Jing has been poisoned. Hurry and save her. Hurry. When he said this, everyone was shocked. How did she get poisoned? What happened? Who poisoned her? Tangli, what about you? Are you okay? Everyone started asking questions at once. Han Yunxi didn't waste any time and asked directly, do you know what poison she got? What are the symptoms? How long has it been? How is she now? When Han Yunxi opened her mouth, everyone shut up. I don't know. She said her stomach hurt and then she vomited black blood. I gave her some water. She hasn't eaten anything all day, Tangli said anxiously. Her whole body is cold and her breathing is very weak. Sister-in-law, hurry and save her. I beg you. Everyone listened carefully. When they heard Tang Li's last words, they all looked at each other. Madame Tang wondered if Tang Li was too pretentious. Why was he still pretending here? She knew her son best. Other than Long Fei Yi, when had this boy ever said the word beg so easily? Let's go and take a look. Hurry. Han Yunxi made a prompt decision. Long Fei Yi stopped her and was about to remind her when Han Yunxi said, don't worry, I won't go in. Although Ning Jing only brought a servant, Auntie Shuang, with her, they still had to be careful to avoid exposing their identities. She told Tang Li, hurry up and find a doctor to check on her and tell me her pulse. Also, collect the blood she vomited and give it to me as soon as possible. I'll wait outside the courtyard. Tang Li immediately went to do it. Long Fei Yi personally rushed over with Han Yunxi. At this juncture, Ning Jing couldn't die, especially not in the Tang sect. Soon, Tang Li collected the black blood and gave it to Han Yunxi. He also told her about the doctor's diagnosis. His hands trembled slightly as he held the plate of black blood. Han Yunxi didn't even activate the detoxification system. She could tell at a glance that the poison in the blood was Ghost Night Out. She instantly understood what was going on. Taking this poison would cause slight abdominal pain for 3 consecutive nights. After that, the body would need to recuperate for a month. This must be Ning Jing's trick. She wanted to avoid the wedding night and also wanted to avoid her mother-in-law making things difficult for her. This was a good idea. Unfortunately, she wasn't very lucky. Fragrances and pollen were the most taboo things for those who had taken the Night of Ghosts poison. Once they encountered these 2 things and exceeded a certain amount, the poison would multiply, leading to true poisoning. It would cause severe abdominal cramps and even affect normal breathing. Tang Li's room was full of flowers, and they were all fresh. It would be strange if she wasn't poisoned. Fortunately, Tang Li was by her side and discovered it in time. Otherwise, this girl might really die on her wedding day. Han Yunxi quickly made the antidote and gave it to Tang Li. Tang Li took it and ran back. Han Yunxi was in disbelief. She muttered to herself, why are you in such a hurry? What happened? Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi told him the truth. Long Fei Yi didn't ask anything else. He only asked, his room is full of flowers? Yes, roses and Ning Jing's favorite daisies. I wanted to give Ning Jing a surprise. I didn't expect that I would almost kill her. Han Yunxi laughed. Is this what you mean by suppressing first and then showing off later? Long Fei Yi asked again. It was rare for him to be interested in this kind of thing. It's to coax a girl. Let her be disappointed first, then give her a surprise. No matter how hard-hearted she is, she will be more or less touched. Han Yunxi laughed. Long Fei Yi nodded thoughtfully. What about you? Chapter 681. It turned out that suppressing her feelings first was a way to make a girl happy and touched. This was the first time Long Fei Yi had heard of such a thing, and it was also the first time he cared about such a thing. Was this trick effective on Han Yunxi? Han Yunxi didn't expect Long Fei Yi to suddenly ask such a question. She looked at him, and her mind was a little blank. She didn't know how to answer for a moment. Long Fei slowly drew closer and stared at her. He seemed interested and patient, but also impatient and persistent in his desire for an answer. A familiar aura slowly approached. Han Yunxi subconsciously leaned back, wanting to put some distance between them. She didn't reject this man's approach, but his aura was too strong. If he was too close, she would have difficulty breathing, her heart would race, and she would be inexplicably nervous. Long Fei Yi didn't rush her. His tall body leaned forward as she leaned back. Han Yunxi hadn't seen him at such a close distance and looked into his eyes for a long time. These deep eyes weren't as cold and sharp as usual, but they were still bottomless. Han Yunxi clearly knew that she would be addicted, but she still couldn't help but look into his eyes. Long Fei Yi, looking at your eyes at such a close distance, can I see into your heart? Long Fei Yi, how many secrets are hidden in your heart? Time stood still, and everything seemed to be silent. The two of them stared at each other. He was in her eyes, and she was in his eyes. Suddenly, Han Yunxi lost her balance and instantly fell back. Long Fei Yi grabbed her waist. However, he didn't pick her up. Instead, he leaned in front of her and finally said, "What about you? What do you like?" Han Yunxi had just been frightened and had already recovered from her intoxication. "What do you mean, like what?" She played dumb. "What flowers do you like?" Long Fei Yi asked seriously. "Are you going to give me one?" Han Yunxi smiled. Had Long Fei Yi ever given her flowers? What about the plum blossoms in the Jiangnan Plum Blossom Sea? If he could count the flowers, then this guy was truly unprecedented in the past and would never be surpassed in the future. At most, other people would give him 999 roses. The plum trees in his sea of plum blossoms in Jiangnan were more than 999. If one were to count the number of flowers, it was impossible to count how many there were. Long Fei Yi actually didn't need anyone to teach him how to gift things, because no one could teach him how to be so generous. Seeing Han Yunxi smile, Long Fei Yi seemed a little unhappy. He immediately ended the topic of flowers, but did not end the previous topic. He asked again, "What do you like?" He furrowed his brows and insisted on an answer. "I like it." Han Yunxi thought about it seriously. She thought for a long time while he waited patiently. Finally, she asked, "Long Fei Yi, will you give me whatever I like?" "Yes," he answered without thinking. "Then listen carefully." Han Yunxi smiled mysteriously. She was leaning back, and all her strength was on his arm. She actually hooked her finger, indicating for him to come closer. She was almost leaning back at a 90-degree angle. If Long Fei Yi got any closer, the two of them would definitely fall together. Long Fei Yi suddenly scooped her up and pushed her into his arms. He tilted his head and put his ear close to hers. "Say it." "I like it." Han Yunxi kept him in suspense again. She smiled faintly. "I like it, Long Fei Yi's patience seemed to have no limit in front of this woman. "I like Long Fei Yi. Can you give him to me?" Han Yunxi finally gave an answer. Although it wasn't her first time confessing, her ears were still a little hot. Long Fei Yi stared blankly. Han Yunxi gently pinched his good-looking chin and smiled. "You have to keep your word. You can't go back on it." Long Fei Yi allowed her to play with his chin as he asked indifferently, "Wasn't this prince yours long ago? When did you lose this prince, and now you want to go back?" She had once said that she wanted all of him. Looking at Long Fei Yi's gentle gaze, Han Yunxi felt a little unreal. She had never thought that this man could say such nice and gentle words of love. She was just joking. Seeing that he was still so serious, she suddenly stopped laughing. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she actually saw a trace of sadness in his gentle eyes. Sadness? She had always thought that this man wouldn't have such emotions. His heart was stronger than his sword skills, so how could he be hurt? Who could hurt him? Between the two of them, wasn't she the one who had been hurt all these years? At most, he was angry. She rose from his embrace and stood up straight, looking at him seriously. She wanted to see the person in front of her clearly. She was really afraid that this was all a dream. Long Fei Yi, can you say that one more time? When did you lose this prince? Now. No, the one before that. Say it one more time. She was delighted, bold, and greedy. Idiot, Long Fei Yi laughed. Han Yunxi was a little angry. She allowed him to laugh, but Long Fei Yi gently embraced her and whispered by her ear, Han Yunxi, this prince has long been yours. Her smile was as red as the clouds, blooming on her face. Her heart was filled with joy as her face and ears turned red. His voice was so gentle that it melted her heart. Long Fei Yi, no need to coax me, no need to restrain me, no need to lift me up. As long as you show me your tenderness, Yunxi's heart of stone will melt. Say it one more time, she stubbornly demanded. She was greedy. Han Yunxi, this prince has long been yours. Yours alone. His hot breath blew by her ear. Han Yunxi was immersed in happiness when he said domineeringly, Han Yunxi, you can only have this prince. As soon as he finished speaking, he nibbled on her earlobe and kissed his way down her jade neck. Han Yunxi trembled as a numbing sensation spread throughout her body. Long Fei Yi, you're naughty, she thought he'd become gentler, but he was still so domineering. She used all her strength to push him away, but he restrained her hands. He seemed to like her collarbone very much. His kisses lingered around that area, both domineering and greedy. No matter how she pushed, he didn't feel at ease. In the end, she had no choice but to let him bully her. He kissed her all the way down to the place where her clothes overlapped. He seemed to want to continue, but suddenly stopped. Han Yunxi was calm at first, but she couldn't take it anymore and wrapped her arms around his neck. Long Fei Yi, that's enough. That's enough. They were outside Tang Li's courtyard in broad daylight. If someone saw them, where would she put her face? It was clearly Tang Li and Ning Jing who were in the bridal chamber, all right? Between the two of them, who was more conservative and who was from the modern era? Fortunately, Long Fei Yi was still rational. His lips landed on her collarbone and planted a fierce kiss there before he let her go. He even thought about the question from before and asked, besides this prince, what else do you like? I'm not telling you. Han Yunxi huffed as she glared at him. At this moment, Tang Li suddenly scurried out from the side. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, Han Yunxi jumped in fright. Fortunately, this guy didn't see anything. Sister-in-law, Ning Jing is all ready. Tang Li suddenly stopped when he saw Han Yunxi. He looked at Han Yunxi and then at Long Fei Yi with a look of disbelief. What's wrong? Ning Jing hasn't recovered yet. Han Yunxi asked with concern. The poison has been neutralized, but she's still unconscious, Tang Li muttered as his gaze unconsciously drifted to Han Yunxi's collarbone. However, when Long Fei Yi glared at him, he immediately looked away and turned to leave. This guy came in such a hurry, but he's leaving just like that. Han Yunxi stopped him. How's her pulse? The doctor said it's normal. Tang Li finally remembered his purpose in coming here and asked, Sister-in-law, when will Ning Jing wake up? Han Yunxi grew serious when it came to professional matters. Once the ghost rampage knight's toxicity increases, it'll cause serious damage to the body, especially to the respiratory tract. How can her pulse be normal? I had the doctor take her pulse 5 times. They were all normal, Tang Li said hastily. 5 times? Han Yunxi looked doubtfully at Tang Li. Is that necessary? Why are you in such a rush? I'm just suspecting that the pulse isn't right. Tang Li hastened to explain. Sister-in-law, that slut just married into our family. If anything happens to her, we won't be able to explain things to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. She asked for it herself, Han Yunxi said coldly. She won't admit it either. She might even accuse me of poisoning her. Tang Li added. Han Yunxi thought it made sense. If her pulse is normal, then that means her body is strong enough to withstand the poison. She's so thin. How can her body be strong? Tang Li was doubtful. Being fat and thin isn't necessarily related to one's body, Han Yunxi said seriously. It's fine as long as she's fine. Aren't you going back yet? Long Fei Yi interrupted. He had no patience to listen to Tang Li and Han Yunxi discuss another woman's body. Tang Li was about to leave when he turned back. Sister-in-law, does that mean her pregnancy won't be affected by the poison? What do you mean? Han Yunxi asked. Her body is strong, but you can't. Are you that impatient? Although she didn't like Ning Jing, she couldn't let Tang Li bully a woman like this. After all, Ning Jing had just been poisoned and was still unconscious. Tang Li felt wronged. He couldn't help but glance at Han Yunxi's collarbone and said timidly, I mean in the future. In the future. Although Ning Jing was unscrupulous and shameless, he wasn't such a beast to take advantage of her. Actually, he was only thinking about having a child because he felt that it would be easier to trap Ning Jing in Crouching Dragon Mountain if they had a child. As for how to have a child, he really didn't think about it seriously. Of course it won't affect her in the future. She should recover after resting for a day or two, Han Yunxi said lightly. Thank you, sister-in-law. Tang Li pretended to carelessly rub at his collar before giving Han Yunxi a meaningful look. Finally, he left. Han Yunxi finally noticed something strange. She rubbed her neck and asked Long Fei Yi, What's wrong with me? Nothing much. Go rest, we'll be leaving tomorrow, Long Fei intoned. Han Yunxi didn't ask any questions. By now, Lady Tang and Tang Zijin had arrived. As soon as they saw Han Yunxi's neck, Tang Zijin averted his eyes, while Lady Tang gave Long Fei Yi a meaningful look without saying a word. She smiled and asked, Yunxi, is that little slut all right? It's nothing serious, Han Yunxi said mildly. Then that's good. Hurry and go back. Plenty of dishes have been served, all of Fei's favorites, Lady Tang chuckled. Fortunately, Han Yunxi didn't go back to the main hall, or else she wouldn't dare to come to the Tang clan again. When she returned to her room and sat down in front of the mirror, she immediately discovered that there was a Chapter 682. Han Yunxi discovered that there was a conspicuous red mark on her collarbone. This was clearly Long Fei Ye's mark, a kiss mark. No wonder Tang Li was acting so strangely, no wonder Lady Tang's smile was so ambiguous, and Tang Zijin turned his head away immediately. Heavens, she'd listened to Lady Tang's words and returned to the main hall. All the elders of the Tang clan were there. If they saw this red mark, where would she hide in the ground? She'd almost stolen the limelight from Tang Li and Ning Jing and become their most memorable wedding day. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Lady Tang didn't even warn her before pushing her into the fire pit. How abominable. Like son, like mother. Han Yunxi couldn't figure it out. She remembered that Long Fei Yi hadn't used much strength, so how did he leave a mark? Of course, Han Yunxi calmed down after her initial excitement. She gently caressed the redness. No one knew what she was thinking, but she suddenly smiled. Mine. The exhausted Han Yunxi was destined to lose sleep that night. She spent an entire night cutting out a dress to make a silk scarf to hide the mark. Otherwise, how was she supposed to face anyone tomorrow? She couldn't figure out why she never realized that Long Fei Yi was such a bastard. Han Yunxi didn't sleep at all, nor did Long Fei Yi. Although he was at the Tang clan, he kept an eye on the battles between Tianning, Western Zhou, and Tian, and less than a day later, news of the induced labor had shaken Medical City. The Medical Academy head personally investigated the matter and ordered the arrest of head Elder Ling and Lady Lianxin. Academy head Gu wanted to keep the scandal within the Medical Academy and prevent it from spreading. Still, Gu didn't let go of such a good chance. It wasn't clear where Gu found his connections to spread the news, but it only took half a day for Cloud Realm Continent to become a hot topic of discussion. Even if Academy head Gu punished head Elder Ling and Lady Lianxin, he still had to give the world an explanation. Otherwise, the Medical Academy's reputation would be ruined. It had to be said that Gu Qixiao's contributions this time were the greatest. Because of the haste, many of Emperor Tianhui's old retainers in Tianning country had raised their troops and rebelled. Some used the excuse of supporting the third and fourth imperial princes, but were actually trying to take advantage of the chaos to establish their own factions and take a share of Tianning's food. Most of them, however, chose to rely on Long Tianmo. In any case, Ning Qing not only had to deal with the eastern and western battlefields, but also the various separatist factions within the country. Although they weren't strong, they were enough to scatter part of Ning Cheng's forces and disrupt his battle plans. On the western front, as Long Fei Yi predicted, Western Zhou's emperor accepted Chu Tiannin's surrender and blamed Empress Shui's death on Ning Qing and Chu Qingge. The emperor even sent more troops to Chu Tianyin, who had the best understanding of the western regions and ample experience in battle. Tonight, he destroyed one of Ning Cheng's elite troops. On the eastern front, Long Tianmo might have no experience in battle, but General Mu's estate wasn't easy to deal with. Despite their limited military strength, Great General Mu had arranged a good situation. Mu Qingwu was currently on his way to the front lines. With General Mu's arrangements and Mu Qingwu's personal command, Long Tianmo's victory was guaranteed. Your Highness, Long Tianmo really got lucky this time, Chu Shifeng said unhappily. We shouldn't have left Long Tianmo alive in the first place. If they'd killed Long Tianmo, the Tianan territories would be under His Highness Duke of Qin's control right now. His Highness Duke of Qin would be the one asking for profits instead of losses. After all, His Highness Duke of Qin still held the title of Tianning Qin Wang. It was perfectly justified for him to deal with Ning Cheng and Chu Qingge. Do you think the Mu family is so easy to deal with? Long Fei Yi asked. We should have stopped Mu Luiyue from marrying into the Mu estate, Chu Shifeng muttered to himself. Chu Shifeng muttered to himself as he brought up the matter. Moreover, Mu Qingwu joined the Eastern Palace back then because he wanted to investigate the disaster relief grain. Mu Qingwu, the Mu clan isn't under his control, Long Fei Yi said. Mu Qingwu had pretended to rely on the Eastern Palace for the sake of his hot-bloodedness, for the sake of the country and its people. He wanted to uncover evidence of the imperial uncle's embezzlement of relief grain, but who knew that Great General Mu would actually side with Long Tianmo for the sake of Mu Luiyue? Whether it was Long Tianmo or Mu Qingwu, Long Fei Yi didn't think much of either of them. He only feared General Mu. The situation in the western regions was growing more and more chaotic. That old fox had managed to convince Long Tianmo to wait until now to send out his troops. It was a skill of his own. Your Highness, but Mu, Chu Shifeng didn't understand, but Long Fei Yi only said coldly, as long as General Mu is around, don't try to scheme against Tianan. Your Highness, are we really afraid of General Mu's estate? Chu Shifeng wasn't convinced. Leaving aside other forces, the Bailey army was strong enough to fight against General Mu's estate. How could Long Feiyi really be afraid? He lazily sat on the warm couch and casually said, "In this world, besides the Chu army and the Mu army, who else knows the Northern Li's cavalry better?" Long Feiyi had said during Tianning civil unrest that Tianning and Tianan were meant to defend against Northern Li's cavalry. The south-central region was a land of fish and rice, a rich and fertile land. It was also the most densely populated area, so he would never allow the flames of war to spread there. This time, he'd accepted Chu Tianning's surrender and kept the Chu clan troops for more than just dealing with Ning Jing. "Go make preparations. We'll set out for South Ning tomorrow," Long Feiyi ordered. "Your Highness is leaving Yaoshui?" Chu Shifeng was astonished. Wasn't it too early to leave Yaoshui now? After all, the war had only just begun. There were bound to be variables. As long as Northern Li doesn't make a move, the three countries in the west won't be affected. Although Ningqing was being attacked from two sides, he had enough troops and frightening amounts of wealth. He wouldn't lose much in a year and a half. Long Feiyi figured that the situation in the west would continue for another 2 to 3 years. His main concern was still Northern Li. He had to return to South Ning and the Bailey army to figure out the situation there. Moreover, Bailey Yuanlong had sent him a few letters saying that the noble families in the south-central regions were making a big fuss. It was time for him to go back and suppress their arrogance. The central regions of Cloud Realm continent were home to the noble families, the eastern regions were home to the merchants, and the western regions were home to the Jianghu. The so-called noble families were noble clans that passed down generations of official titles. There were plenty of such families in the south-central regions, but they were far away from the emperor. Their influence grew stronger and stronger until the commander-in-chief's estate rose to prominence. More than a year had passed, but the commander-in-chief's estate hadn't given them any benefits. How could they let the matter rest? If they stirred up chaos in Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tianan, the commander-in-chief's estate couldn't afford any internal strife. Besides these two matters, Long Feiyi still had to go back and check the accounts of his various businesses. He also had to ask Gu about the situation with the perplexing butterfly illusion. In any case, Long Feiyi was extremely busy. But that wasn't what he was most concerned about. Instead, he wanted to go to Celestial Mountain. There were many unknowns on this trip, so he had to take care of all the matters at hand to prevent any unexpected events. After all, he was going to face a lot of trouble on this trip. He didn't want to run into any more trouble. Long Feiyi had made plenty of preparations. Even the change of ownership of the Tang clan and Tang Li's ascension to the throne were all part of his plans. Andrew hadn't colluded with Duan Muyao, but he'd still prepared a trap for her to jump into. He'd put in a lot of thought and effort, but how many people understood him? Even his closest retainer, Chu Shifeng, couldn't make sense of it. After Chu Shifeng left, Long Feiyi went to his usual spot, Han Yunxi's roof. He sat there and stared at Tang Li's brightly lit courtyard. For the first time, he had high hopes for his little brother, Tang Li. He hoped that Tang Li could take control of the Tang clan and Ning Jing within this year. Late at night, Han Yunxi was sewing a silk scarf in her room while Long Feiyi quietly stared at the swing in the courtyard. Years ago, his imperial mother had ended her life on this very swing. By the third watch of the night, Tang Li's courtyard was still brightly lit. Ning Jing had finally woken up, but Tang Li had already fallen asleep. There was no one else in the room. He was leaning against the bed with his arms crossed and his head bowed as he dozed off. Ning Jing's body really was in good shape. She didn't look tired at all, but was in high spirits. Her eyes darted around in their sockets as she prepared to sneak out of bed. Tang Li suddenly collapsed, scaring her into shutting her eyes and pretending to be asleep. Tang Li narrowly avoided falling onto the bed, but woke up quickly enough to stretch and yawn at the same time. Ning Jing heard the noise and didn't dare to open her eyes. She didn't know why her stomach was hurting so badly, but she was sure that Tang Li had saved her. Tang Li sized up Ning Jing's face and suddenly moved closer to her face. A gust of wind blew and Ning Jing's heart almost stopped beating. She could clearly feel Tang Li's breath on her face. This guy was very close to her. What was he trying to do? Ning Jing was perturbed and nervous, but then she heard Tang Li scolding her through gritted teeth, "Bitch. Too much." However, Ning Jing endured it. She very rationally believed that knocking herself out was the wisest choice. At least, Tang Li would only use his mouth and not his hands. But unexpectedly, Tang Li suddenly reached over and pressed her forehead. Ning Jing was furious. Was this guy still a man? Was he trying to sneak up on her while she was in danger? She wanted to push him away, but he gently stroked her forehead and muttered to himself, "You don't have a fever at this time. You shouldn't have a fever, right?" So, he stayed by her side the whole night because he was afraid that she would have a high fever. He quickly let go of her hand and brought her some warm water as he muttered to himself, "Moisten your lips. It'll be troublesome if you get dehydrated." He dipped his finger in the water and gently stroked her lips. The water flowed down from the corner of her mouth and into her neck. He quickly took a handkerchief and wiped it for her. "Hey, I'm not bullying you. I'm just wiping it for you." He really didn't do anything out of line. After wiping it clean, he carefully tucked her in. "You haven't eaten for a day and a night. Why don't you wake up from hunger?" he muttered to himself. Ning Jing almost laughed out loud, but fortunately, she managed to hold it in. For the first time, she felt that this guy's babbling didn't annoy her that much. Soon, Tang Li sat back down and leaned against the side to continue his nap. Ning Jing waited for a long time. When she was sure that he had really fallen asleep, she carefully opened her eyes. She lay there, looking at the flowers and looking at him. She didn't know how long she had been looking at them, and she didn't know how she fell asleep in the end. The next day, when she woke up, Tang Li was already gone. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were about to leave, and Tang Li had gone to send them off. Other than Han Yunxi, Tang Li was the first to know that Long Fei Yi was going to Tianshan. It was already April, and he knew that Long Fei Yi wouldn't stay in Ningnan for too long. Chapter 683. Tang Li came to send off Han Yunxi and the others. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi was already sitting in the carriage. She had already warned Long Fei Yi with her gaze that she didn't want to see anyone for the time being. In fact, Tang Li wanted to secretly ask Han Yunxi for some medicine and poison. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to ask Han Yunxi to get off the carriage in front of Long Fei Yi. As soon as Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi left, Tang Li rushed back to the mountain. On the first day of the wedding, the bride had to serve tea to her parents-in-law. He had already discussed it with his mother. His mother would play the bad cop and make things difficult for Ning Jing, while he would play the good cop and protect Ning Jing. After a year, even if Ning Jing wasn't subdued by him, she still couldn't leave his protection. When the tea was served later, his mother would start making things difficult for him. He had to hurry and make preparations. Although Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi had left the Tang sect, she still paid attention to Tang Li and Ning Jing's situation. She didn't want to gossip, but she needed a definite answer about the dowry. Sure enough, at noon, Long Fei Yi's spy in the Tang sect sent news that Ning Jing's dowry was indeed an arms trade. Han Yunxi looked at the secret letter and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The secret letter described in detail how Ning Jing greeted the two elders of the Tang sect this morning. In the morning, before Madame Tang could make things difficult for Ning Jing, Ning Jing took out the dowry and showed Madame Tang who was in charge. The dowry was the president's token of Cloud Realm's arms trade. Ning Jing said that she could support herself, but the Tang sect might not be able to support her. Then, the two women started to argue. Tang Li didn't have a chance to protect Ning Jing at all because Madame Tang lost. What's wrong? Long Fei Yi asked calmly. Tang Li may not be able to handle Ning Jing. Han Yunqi handed the secret letter over. Long Fei Yi glanced at him and actually smiled. Good loss. What do you mean? Han Yunqi really didn't understand. You lost on purpose. If she loses, Tang Zijin will pay more attention to this matter, and Tang Li will be able to secure his position as the sect master. With Long Fei Ye's explanation, Han Yunqi understood. She couldn't help but sigh. How many times did Tang Li kowtow in front of Buddha in his previous life to have such a biological mother? If Mrs. Tang lost to Ning Jing, Tang Zijin would be anxious. He would give Tang Li more support, be it power, wealth, or even force, to deal with Ning Jing. In this way, Tang Li, the new sect leader, would live up to his name. Everything that Mrs. Tang did was for the sake of her son. Han Yunqi thought that with Mrs. Tang around, Tang Li wouldn't lose out. Long Fei Yi remained silent and didn't speak again. Tang Li was indeed lucky. Ever since he was young, no matter how big of a mistake Tang Li made or how big of a mess he made, his aunt would always clean up for him and cover for him. She would never let Tang Li fight for anything. She only wanted Tang Li to be safe and happy. What are you thinking about? Han Yunqi asked, puzzled. She didn't expect Long Fei Yi to be distracted. Nothing. Long Fei gently pulled her into his arms, his hand patting her shoulder intermittently. It was obvious that he was still thinking about other things. What are you thinking about that you don't want me to know? Or are you thinking about someone that you don't want me to know? Han Yunqi asked jokingly. Long Fei Yi actually replied, I'm thinking about someone. Who? Han Yunqi grew serious. She didn't think Long Fei Yi was the type to joke about something like this. Master Kenzo, Long Fei Yi intoned. Summer is the time when he loses his mind. Han Yunqi hesitated, then said, Long Fei Yi, how about we bring Dr. Gu to Celestial Mountain so Senior Kenzo can take a look? No. Long Fei Ye's tone made it clear that there was no room for discussion. Han Yunqi had never been to Celestial Mountain before, so she wasn't clear on the situation. She didn't try to persuade him, but figured it wouldn't be too late to discuss the matter after seeing Senior Kenzo. After leaving Reclining Dragon Range, the carriage headed south. Uncle Gao kept a low profile while Chu Shifeng and his guards followed them from the shadows. Neither the west nor the south knew of Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi's whereabouts. It was April, but spring was still in the air in the north. Summer had already arrived in the south, and the green mountains and plains were covered in white. The rain fell like smoke in the wind. Ignoring the flames of war behind them, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi headed towards the picturesque south of Ning. Ning Qing probably couldn't keep an eye on Long Fei Ye's movements right now, but someone else was keeping an eye on Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi. It was none other than Jun Yixie's master, former head of the 100 Poisoned sect, and heir to the Wind clan of the 7 noble families, Bai Yanqing. Currently, he and Jun Yixie were in the temporary imperial residence of the Northern Dynasty's emperors. The Northern Dynasty's emperors were touring the east and personally inspecting the 3 major horse farms. Master and disciple accompanied them in secret. Although the 3 horse farms were under the jurisdiction of the Crown Prince and Second Imperial Prince on the surface, they were all under Jun Yixie's control after the last horse plague. More specifically, they were all under Bai Yanqing's control. Bai Yanqing had not only created the perfect medicine to control the horse plague, but also cultivated a special type of forage grass that could be mixed with medicine to make special fodder that shortened the normal growth time of war horses. In the past, it took 4 years to raise a horse into a war horse, 3 years to raise it, and half a year to train it. With this fodder, even a newborn would only need 2 years. Thus, the Northern Dynasty's emperors sent people to secretly negotiate with the Yunnan Trade Consortium about the sale of war horses. At the same time, they secretly purchased 2-year-old horses from herdsmen and used fodder to raise them for a few months before they could be used as war horses. Currently, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium hadn't made any progress. They did buy some from the herdsmen, but it wasn't enough. Even when the Northern Dynasty's emperors were out on patrol, they didn't forget to bring along a strategic map. A large leather map was spread out on the table. The Northern Dynasty's emperors were currently pointing out the location of Fenglin Prefecture as they discussed the battle with Bai Yanqing. After going around in circles, General Chu actually went back to Western Zhou. The Northern Dynasty's emperors sighed with emotion. What a pity, what a pity. If the 3 horse carriages hadn't been so badly damaged, his cavalry would have long crossed the 3-way battlefield and attacked Western Zhou and Tianning. He never expected that Tianning would fall into civil strife after it was split in 2 and the situation in the west would turn out like this. This time, Northern Li had truly missed a golden opportunity. Your Majesty, have you heard of a story from Tianning? Bai Yanqing stroked his beard with a faint smile. He was dressed in long grey robes and looked calm and composed, like an otherworldly expert who was mysterious beneath his facade. What story? The Northern Dynasty's emperors asked. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. After Bai Yanqing finished speaking, Jun Yixia explained to the Northern Dynasty's emperors in detail. Your Majesty, the chaos between the 3 countries will last for a long time. Your Majesty still has a chance. Once the war horses are ready, you can send your troops south and reap the benefits. With the number of war horses we have now, we might not even have a chance of victory in 2 years. Zhen won't fight a battle without confidence. Don't forget that the Duke of Qin's navy is still eyeing us from the Eastern Sea. Without a doubt, the Northern Dynasty's emperor's greatest enemy was Long Fei Yi. Your Majesty, is this because you don't trust the old man? Bai Yanqing laughed coldly. Compared to Jun Yixia's respect, Bai Yanqing wasn't humble in front of the Northern Dynasty's emperors. Neither was his aura weak. Bai Yanqing, how do you expect Zhen to trust you? Cloud Realm Continent's most fertile lands are all in the Duke of Qin's hands. It's already summer in the south, so harvest season will arrive in a few months. The flames of war won't reach there. When the time comes, Western Zhou and Tiannan will have no choice but to transfer grain from his hands. He won't miss out on Ning Cheng's lands. The Northern Dynasty's emperors said coldly. Western Zhou and Tianning's lands were barren to begin with, so grain production was limited. Now that the flames of war had begun, almost all farming and animal husbandry had stopped. Although Tiannan wasn't the main battlefield and its agriculture was well developed, all of its men had gone to war. Fewer people were left to do farm work, which would greatly reduce grain production. Once the grain reserves were used up, both sides would have to buy grain from outside. This was the perfect time for the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to reap the spoils of war. Moreover, Long Fei Ye's style wasn't just for grain. It was very likely that he'd take advantage of the situation to send out his troops and divide up Tianning's lands with Western Zhou and Tiannan. The Northern Dynasty's emperors spoke the truth, but Bai Yanqing didn't take it to heart. Smiling, he said, Your Majesty, please believe the old man. This autumn will be an eventful one for the Duke of Qin. As long as the Crown Prince can quickly increase the number of horses, the old man's promise to Your Majesty will come true very soon. Seeing the Northern Dynasty's emperors hesitate, Bai Yanqing added, Your Majesty trusted the old man in the past. If you don't believe him now, the old man will be disappointed. Bai Yanqing's eyes were like a mysterious lake that had lain dormant for thousands of years. Nothing could disturb it. The Northern Dynasty's emperors recalled Bai Yanqing's promise. He'd said that the 7 noble families, the Wind and Black clans, would swear fealty to the Northernly Imperial family and unite Cloud Realm continent together. Because of this promise, the Northern Dynasty's emperors had conferred upon Jun Yixia the title of Duke of Kong and granted him unlimited power. Bai Yanqing was an honored guest of honor and treated him with limitless respect. The Northern Dynasty's emperors stared at Bai Yanqing for a long time before coming to a decision. Someone come, send orders to the second imperial prince to cross the snowy mountains and recruit soldiers and horses. Zhen will give him 3 months. If he doesn't bring back the horses, then he doesn't need to come back. Beyond Northern Li's lofty snowy mountains was the northernmost part of Cloud Realm continent. It was also the last piece of undeveloped land, home to a tribe of primitive slaves called the Winter Crow clan. 3 years ago, the Northern Dynasty's emperors had sent out envoys to bypass the snowy mountains and reach the Winter Crow clan for the first time. There, they discovered the best breed of horses, the Winter Crow horses. Over the past 3 years, Northernly had already built a winding mountain path that allowed them to reach the Winter Crow clan in a short time. However, the Winter Crow clan was fierce and untrustworthy, making it difficult to communicate with them. Even a small business deal with them could put one's life in danger, much less a major horse trade. Northernly had sent out 10 envoys in total, but none of them had returned. Thus, the Northern Dynasty's emperors hadn't held out much hope. But now that the 3 nations were at war, he had no choice but to try. If Bai Yanqing was confident he could keep the Long Fei Yi in check, then he could catch them off guard when autumn came and the 3 nations ran out of food supplies. No matter what, he had to have enough war horses in reserve. A crafty look flashed past Bai Yanqing's eyes before he crossed his arms and said, "I wish His Second Highness good luck." Imperial Father, this son is willing to go as well to protect the second Imperial Prince, Jun Yixia volunteered himself. The Northern Dynasty's emperors looked at him hesitantly. To the readers, welcome to Jean Mo's public WeChat account, Gmomo 2015. There's a small drama, character chronicles, and the heavenly concubine sweet words to read. Chapter 684. This trip to the Winter Crow clan would be fraught with danger. However, the Northern Dynasty's emperors weren't worried about Jun Yixia's safety, but who would take over the horse farms and snow mountains once Jun Yixia was gone? If Jun Yixia died in the Winter Crow clan, then who would get the farms and snow mountains? The Crown Prince had always been in charge of recruiting soldiers and buying horses, but the Northern Dynasty's emperors had sent the second Imperial Prince this time precisely because they didn't want the Crown Prince to take any risks. A country couldn't go a day without a ruler or heir apparent. With the second Imperial Prince and Jun Yixia going, it was inevitable that the horse farms and snow mountains would fall into the Crown Prince's hands. The Northern Dynasty's emperors valued the Crown Prince, but didn't want him to have too much power. After all, Crown Prince Long Tianma had set up his own house to serve as a warning. In the midst of her hesitation, Bai Yanqing spoke up. The second Imperial Prince might not be able to handle this. If Yixia goes, old man won't have to worry. The barbarians are afraid of supernatural powers, so Yixia's poison skills should be enough to deal with them. The Winter Crow clan was extremely backward, especially when it came to medicine. Many of their incurable illnesses were attributed to supernatural beings. If Jun Yixia used his poison skills there, he might even be worshipped as a god. In the Winter Crow clan, anyone who was worshipped as a god could order them around as they pleased. Poison skills, that's a good idea. Beloved subject, why didn't you say so earlier? The Northern Dynasty's emperors suddenly realized. I just thought of it, Bai Yanqing explained. Just like that, the Northern Dynasty's emperors agreed. After Bai Yanqing and his disciple left the palace, Bai Yanqing instructed in a low voice, "Find someone to tell the crown prince the news in a few days. He won't miss out on a chance to fight for merits." Zhu Nixie's lips curved up in a ruthless smile. "Master is wise and brilliant. This disciple definitely won't disappoint you." No matter who it was, as long as they could bring back the horses, they would be considered meritorious and would be able to directly take charge of the warhorse warehouse. The crown prince would not easily give this opportunity to the second prince. Zhu Nixie had plenty of ways to lure the crown prince to the Winter Crow clan. Once he was there, he would be able to decide how the crown prince and the second prince died. Once the Northern Dynasty's emperors lost the crown prince and the second prince, it was as if they had lost their left and right arms. Even if they supported another prince, they would not be able to fight against him in a short period of time. In the future, when the Northern Dynasty's emperors grow old, it would be hard to say who would take control of Northernly. Previously, Zhu Nixie had never understood why his master wanted him to keep an eye on the internal affairs of Northernly and not be distracted by interfering with external affairs. Now, he was more or less obvious. If he did not lose to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, perhaps he would be more relied on by the Northern Dynasty's emperors. His master had set up a big picture, but the most important thing was to control Northernly. Bai Qingyan and Zhu Nixie returned to their own tents before Bai Qingyan spoke up. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium is the biggest variable. The grain and horses in their hands can't be underestimated. Master, just what is the relationship between the Ning clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? In the past, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium sold quite a few red coat cannons to the Ning clan during their war with Western Zhou, Zhu Nixie reminded. Bai Yanqing shook his head. There's definitely something fishy going on. Also, Ning Jing actually married into the Tang clan. Because of her marriage, the plans to grow medicine in the Snow Mountains were all put on hold. What do they have to do with the Tang clan? Zhu Nixie muttered to himself. You don't need to worry about that for now. Make your preparations well and be careful when you go to the Winter Crow clan, Bai Yanqing instructed. Don't worry, master. It's just a trivial matter. Zhu Nixie was as confident as ever. At this moment, Zhu Nixie's junior sister and Bai Yanqing's adopted daughter, Bai Yuqiao, walked in. Go and make your preparations. We'll set out tomorrow for a trip back to Imperial City. Bai Yanqing waved his hand, clearly shooing them away. Zhu Nixie didn't want to leave so soon. Master, about Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, do your part well. Bai Yanqing was unhappy. Zhu Nixie was both unsatisfied and curious. His main concern was how his master was going to deal with Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. What he didn't understand the most was why his master had warned him not to touch Han Yunxi so casually. Just what kind of medicine was he selling? Every time he asked, his master would either change the topic or chase him away. He had endured it for a long time. Master, do we still have secrets between us? His usually cold and insufferably arrogant eyes were filled with stubbornness and even a hint of grievance. Are you suspecting your master? Bai Yanqing's face fell. Bai Yuqiao silently retreated to the side. Seeing her usually arrogant senior brother being as stubborn as a child, she felt her heart ache. She knew all of her master's plans and had wanted to secretly tell him several times, but she didn't have the courage. That's not it. Since master doesn't want your disciple to interfere, your disciple will obey. Zhu Nixie finished speaking and turned to leave. When he reached the door, Bai Qingyan said coldly, You've already been defeated by a woman over and over again. What right do you have to interfere? Don't worry, master will avenge you for the humiliation Long Fei Yi gave you. Don't be anxious. Hearing this, Zhu Nixie's dim eyes immediately lit up. He turned and respectfully bowed. Thank you, master. Seeing this, Bai Yuqiao felt extremely helpless. She knew that her senior brother must have been too happy and didn't notice that Master only mentioned Long Fei Yi and not Han Yunxi. What her senior brother wanted the most was to get revenge on Han Yunxi. After all, he lost every time because of Han Yunxi. What are you still standing there for? Bai Qingyan's stern voice broke Bai Yuqiao's train of thought. She quickly ran over and handed over a secret missive. Master, the City of Daughters sent this over at top speed. The City of Daughters had long been under Bai Yanqing's control. Even Jun Yixia didn't know about this. Bai Yanqing opened it and suddenly laughed. As expected, the old man guessed correctly. Bai Yuqiao was curious but didn't dare to ask. Only when Bai Yanqing threw the letter on the table did she catch a glimpse of the words inside. She was extremely shocked. The letter said that the Tian and country's Empress Dowager had offered an extremely high price for the #1 expert in the City of Daughters. The city lord, Madame Lengyu, had personally taken action to kidnap a person. Seeing that person's name, Bai Yuqiao was shocked. Master, it seems like you guessed correctly. Bai Yanqing's eyes narrowed, revealing a terrifying killing intent. It must be him. Bai Yuqiao was most afraid of her master's bloodthirsty appearance. He didn't have his usual elegance and calmness. He was like a dark avenger. Bai Yuqiao didn't know where her master's hatred came from. She only hoped that her master would treat her senior brother well and not let him become a tool for his revenge. How's the investigation of the mermaid clan? Bai Yanqing asked again. It's still under investigation. The mermaids in the water are not difficult to deal with, but those on land are troublesome. Your disciple will make good use of the time. Bai Yuqiao said seriously. Very good, if this matter is settled. Master will definitely tell you where your sister is. Bai Yanqing was in a good mood. Go personally to the City of Daughters and tell Lengyu that no matter what, accept this deal. Bai Yuqiao received the order and left. When she reached the entrance of the tent, she exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Her small hand covered her chest, feeling her wildly beating heart. Master hadn't mentioned her sister for many years. She was adopted by Master and always thought that she was an orphan. However, many years ago, Master accidentally mentioned that she had a sister with eyes as big as hers. Master said that he only knew that much, but she knew that Master wasn't telling the truth. She knew Master better than her senior brother. Little sister, Bai Yuqiao muffled her mouth. Although she was overjoyed, her eyes were wet. She hadn't cried in a long, long time. Little sister, where is she? Was this what it felt like to have family? She suddenly felt like she wasn't so lonely anymore. Northern Light seemed peaceful, but there were huge movements. Who knew if Long Fei Yi would be able to sense them in the short span of a month? Yes, 1 month. May was the best season to climb Celestial Mountain. The mountain paths were easy to traverse and the weather was just right. Besides taking care of matters in South Ning, they could reach the foot of the mountain by the end of the month. They were in a hurry from Reclining Dragon Range to South Ning Prefecture, but just as they were about to enter South Ning Prefecture's borders, a guard came with bad news. Even though it was the middle of the night, Chu Shifeng didn't hesitate to wake Long Fei Yi. Your Highness, something big's happened. Grand Concubine Yi's gone. Long Fei Yi's eyes flew open. Han Yunxi was startled awake as well. What do you mean? Long Fei Yi asked coldly. This evening, a servant girl went to deliver food, but she was already gone. All of the shadow guards in the ancestral hall were killed with sword wounds. Judging from the scene, they were probably robbed. The attackers' martial arts were extremely high, Chu Shifeng reported. Are there any other clues? Long Fei Yi was still calm, but this was no small matter. During the chaos in Tianning's capital, Grand Concubine Yi had been rescued by the Shadow Guards and sent to South Ning Prefecture. After the Duke of Qin's estate was built, Grand Concubine Yi had been living in the ancestral hall of the estate. She spent her days chanting scriptures and worshipping Buddha until she faded out of the public eye. Grand Concubine Yi wasn't just an old imperial concubine. Although she wasn't clear on Long Fei Ye's origins, she knew Long Fei Yi wasn't Emperor Tianhui's son. That fact alone was enough to threaten Long Fei Yi. Thus, Long Fei Yi hadn't agreed when she asked to become a nun at the nunnery. Instead, he'd placed her under house arrest in the ancestral hall and sent 3 groups of shadow guard to guard the place. Over the past year, she'd been safe and sound. Who knew that something would happen now? What were the kidnappers' motives? None at the moment. Your Highness, should this subordinate hurry back first? Chu Shifeng was very anxious. Before Long Fei Yi could reply, Han Yunxi said, "We'll go back together. If the kidnappers aren't trying to use Grand Concubine to threaten us, then they must be suspecting your Highness's identity." "I'm afraid it's the latter." Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed sinisterly. Long Tianma. Emperor Tianhui and Empress Dowager Qin had both suspected this in the past. They'd even hired assassins from the City of Assassins to fight over Mama Su. Without any other clues, Long Tianma was the prime suspect. Long Tianma had fled to the west, but Empress Dowager Qin and the imperial uncle's estate had all stayed behind in Tianan to follow him. Besides Emperor Tianhui, the only other person who knew was Empress Dowager Qin, the current Empress Dowager of Tianan. That very night, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi abandoned their carriage and rode with Chu Shifeng back to South Ning Prefecture. Chapter 685. Just who had kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi? What were their motives? Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi rushed back to the scene at South Ning Prefecture's Duke of Qin's estate and sent men to Tianan City's Marquis Pingbei's estate to check on Murong Wanru's condition. No matter what the kidnappers' motives were, they had to take precautions. They had to prevent Grand Concubine Yi from leaking the secret. Murong Wanru might be unconscious like a vegetable, but she was the key to threatening Grand Concubine Yi. By the time they reached the Duke of Qin's estate in South Ning, it was already late at night. Grand Concubine Yi's ancestral hall was hidden in the bamboo forest behind the estate, secluded and quiet. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi hadn't come to see her since she moved in. Today was their first visit. The shadow guards' corpses were all motionless, scattered throughout the bamboo forest. The fire in the ancestral hall flickered on and off. From a distance, it didn't look as solemn and holy as usual, but cold and terrifying. Han Yunxi, Long Fei Yi, and Han Yunxi walked all the way over, examining multiple shadow guard corpses. Without exception, all of them had been killed with a single slash to the throat. When they reached the ancestral hall, they found it neat and tidy. There were no signs of fighting, as if nothing had happened at all. Grand Concubine Yi could walk out from behind the curtains at any moment. There were 3 layers of defense around the ancestral hall, totaling 100 guards. Yet they had all been wiped out without arousing the attention of the other guards. What kind of skills were these? How fast were they? Long Fei Yi narrowed his icy eyes as he surveyed his surroundings. "Where's Gui Mama?" Chu Shifeng immediately brought Gui Mama inside. She was the only servant girl in the ancestral hall who took care of Grand Concubine Yi's daily needs. "This servant greets your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei." Gui Mama trembled as she kowtowed on the ground. She was the one who discovered Grand Concubine Yi's disappearance. "When was the last time you saw the Grand Imperial Concubine?" Long Fei Yi asked. "In the time it takes to make a bowl of noodles, your Highness Duke of Qin, this is too strange." That day, this old servant had been accompanying Imperial Concubine Dowager the entire time. In the evening, She said that she wanted to eat vegetarian noodles and asked this old servant to make a bowl. In the time it took to make a bowl of noodles, when this old servant returned, Imperial Concubine Dowager had already disappeared. I couldn't find her anywhere in the temple hall. Gue Momo reported honestly. Han Yunxi looked suspiciously at Long Fei Yi, and Long Fei Yi knew that she was doubting Nanny Gui's trustworthiness. To be able to kill the shadow guard and kidnap the person without anyone knowing, it would be very difficult to do so without a spy. Long Fei Yi gave Han Yunxi a reassuring look. Gue Mama had served Grand Concubine Yi for years and was loyal and devoted. Even if she wanted to betray her, she wouldn't have waited until now. Have the decorations here been touched? Long Fei Yi asked again. Gue Momo looked around and was certain. Your Highness Duke of Qin, nothing has been touched in the temple hall. Chu Shifeng added, Your Highness, this subordinate has checked everything inside and out. The kidnappers should have only gone to the temple hall. In other words, even Imperial Concubine Dowager didn't sense the movements outside. Long Fei Yi wanted to confirm this point. If Grand Concubine Yi had sensed the movements outside and knew there were assassins, she would have at least called for help. Even if she didn't, there would have been signs of a struggle. To kill 100 shadow guards in the time it took to cook a bowl of noodles without attracting the attention of Grand Concubine Yi in the temple hall meant that there were few people in Cloud Realm continent with such skills. Your Highness, could it have been Zhang Chu Shifeng asked doubtfully. Why would he kidnap Grand Concubine Dowager for no reason at all? Han Yunxi asked, but Chu Shifeng could only shake his head. I can only say that he's a suspect. There are probably only 6 people in the world with such skills. Which 6? Han Yunxi was curious. She knew very little about the martial arts world's experts. Tianshan Kenzo, Zhangqiuzi, City of Daughters City Lord Lady Lengyu, Carefree City Lord Qi Zonglin, and the Tang clan's Tang Zijin, Chu Shifeng replied. And the last one? Han Yunxi asked next. It's His Highness Duke of Qin himself. Chu Shifeng felt helpless. Actually, if Gu Beiyue's martial arts hadn't been crippled and Chu Yuni hadn't gone blind, the two of them would be on the list as well. Both His Highness Duke of Qin and Tang Zijin could be eliminated, leaving only Zhangqiuzi, Lady Lengyu, and Qi Zonglin as the biggest suspects. Unfortunately, all 3 of them used swords. The shadow guards had all been killed with a single slash to the throat. It was impossible to tell what kind of sword skills the culprit had used, and the wounds were very ordinary. There was nothing special about the sword either. Thus, it was impossible to eliminate the 3 suspects. Of course, it wasn't certain that the culprit was one of the 3, but they were the biggest suspects. If it was Zhangqiuzi, then it'd be fine. But if it was Lady Lengyu or Qi Zonglin, then things would get even more complicated. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were both paid to do business. If the culprit really was one of the 2 city lords' flowers, then they'd have to find out who hired them. Your Highness, we should have silenced them ages ago, Chu Shifeng muttered. He'd never had a good impression of Grand Concubine Yi, an old woman who coveted glory and was afraid of death. Long Fei Yi was cruel and heartless. He'd placed Grand Concubine Yi under house arrest and forbade her from leaving the ancestral hall. He refused to let her see Murong Wanru, but he wasn't so heartless as to kill his own foster mother. In the end, he'd called Grand Concubine Yi Mufei for over a decade. In the midst of his silence, news from Tianan City arrived. Murong Wanru was still at Marquis Pingbei's estate, lying there perfectly fine without any abnormalities. Long Fei Yi thought it over before he said coldly, Chu Shifeng, go personally and set up an ambush. Murong Wanru had teamed up with Empress Dowager Li to kill Grand Concubine Yi and frame Han Yunxi, but ended up suffering the consequences of her own actions. She'd been poisoned and left in a vegetative state. She'd always assumed that Han Yunxi's monthly supply of medicine was enough to keep her alive. As long as Murong Wanru hadn't fallen into the kidnapper's hands, Grand Concubine Yi would have some scruples. Also, arrange for people to ask around in the City of Daughters and Carefree City, Long Fei Yi added. This subordinate understands. I'll do it immediately, Chu Shifeng obeyed and left. You don't seem to suspect Sang Chouzi, Han Yunxi remarked. Long Fei Yi nodded. Sang Chouzi didn't have enough motives. Moreover, the man wouldn't go so far as to threaten him by kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi. News of his plans to ascend Celestial Mountain hadn't spread, so Sang Chouzi wouldn't be on guard against him. Right now, Sang Chouzi's biggest headache should be his engagement with the Tang clan. He wasn't stupid enough to make both the Tang clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium his enemy, so he could only find a way out for himself. If the culprit is after your birth, then I'm afraid there won't be any news of Grand Concubine Yi. If not... Han Yunxi's eyes flickered with a complicated look. Let's just wait for the ransom letter to come to our door. Although the situation was serious, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi could only wait and see how things developed. Take care of the corpses and make arrangements for the funeral. Don't talk about the ancestral hall again. Long Fei Yi instructed the guards before leaving the ancestral hall with Han Yunxi. Hand in hand, they walked along the quiet paths of the Duke of Qin's estate. Soon enough, they reached the hibiscus courtyard and walked up the wooden winding corridor. South Ning Prefecture's Duke of Qin's estate was exactly the same as the original one. Walking here, Han Yunxi felt as if she'd returned to the Duke of Qin's estate 2 years ago in Tianning's capital city. 2 years ago, they'd often walked the long corridors together, one in front of the other. Today, he was holding her hand while she walked shoulder to shoulder with him. Everyone said that the affairs of the world were hard to predict, but people were the hardest to predict. Once again, they reached a fork in the road. To the right was his sleeping quarters, while to the left was her leisurely cloud pavilion. He didn't stop to accompany her all the way to her room. In the middle of the night, the only light on was in the courtyard. The entire building was shrouded in darkness. Han Yunxi assumed that Zhao Mama and the rest had all gone to bed, but she heard sobbing as soon as she reached the courtyard gates. Someone was crying. Who is it? Han Yunxi asked in a low voice. Long Fei Yi didn't speak, but kicked the door open. Grand Concubine Yi's kidnapping proved that the Duke of Qin's estate wasn't completely safe. Who is it? Han Yunxi recognized the voice as Bailey Mingxiang's. Very soon, Bailey Mingxiang walked out from the corner of the room. As soon as she saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, she gave a start. By the time she recovered her senses, Han Yunxi had already walked in front of her. Mingxiang, what's wrong? Who bullied you? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Although there wasn't enough light, she could still see that Bailey Mingxiang's eyes were swollen from crying. Heaven knows how long she'd been crying. Before Bailey Mingxiang could reply, Long Fei Yi said to Han Yunxi in a cold voice, "Rest early. Tomorrow we'll make a trip to the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate." So speaking, he turned to leave. At the door, he called for a guard and ordered in a low voice, "Increase the defenses, especially around the hibiscus courtyard." Bailey Mingxiang hung her head, her hands clenched into fists. She told herself not to look anymore. She was lucky enough to hear his voice, so she couldn't look anymore. But in the end, she couldn't help but lift her head. Unfortunately, his cold figure had long disappeared from sight. Seeing esteemed Wang Fei staring at her, she quickly averted her eyes. "Esteemed Wang Fei, when did you come back? Who bullied you?" Han Yunxi asked unhappily. "How long have you been crying? Don't you want your eyes anymore?" Bailey Mingxiang finally realized her loss of self-control and hastily wiped away her tears. "No. I just missed my mother. Today's the anniversary of her death. Really? Han Yunshi asked doubtfully. Did you suffer grievances at Pill Fiend Pharmacy? Or, did Xiao Yu do something to you? Han Yunshi asked again. That stinky girl, Su Xiaoyu, had a vicious mouth. It wasn't as if she hadn't made things difficult for Bailey Mingxiang before. No. Bailey Mingxiang immediately denied it. Esteemed Wang Fei, Xiao Yu is still a child. She wouldn't make me cry. I really do miss my mother. In reality, Su Xiaoyu had humiliated her again tonight and chased her away. Ever since Gu Beiyue left South Ning, Su Xiaoyu had caused her no small amount of trouble. Su Xiaoyu was indeed a child, but she wasn't an ordinary child. In just a few short months, Su Xiaoyu had doused her with cold water, caught a snake to scare her, put dead rats on her bed, and even tripped her several times. She could endure and forget about it, but that little girl's mouth was truly too vicious. She could humiliate someone to death with just her mouth. Although she had been raised in a boudoir since she was young, she still wouldn't be bullied to this extent by a child. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoyu had something on her. Han Yunshi thought that no matter how bad Bailey Mingxiang was, it was impossible for that little girl, Su Xiaoyu, to bully her to this extent. She believed in Bailey Mingxiang. At this time, Su Xiaoyu suddenly opened the door and came out. Chapter 686. When Su Xiaoyu opened the door, she was stunned for a moment before she cried out in surprise, "Master!" Zhao Mama and Bailey Mingxiang both called Han Yunshi, Her Highness the Princess Consort. Su Xiaoyu used to call her that as well, but one day after she lost her memory, she suddenly stopped calling Han Yunshi, Her Highness the Princess Consort, and started calling her Master. She didn't care about Han Yunshi's identity. She only knew that Han Yunshi was her savior. She rushed out in disbelief and circled around Han Yunshi, sizing her up from head to toe. "Master, you're finally back. You've lost a lot of weight." Her tone, expression, and gaze didn't match her age at all. She was so mature that she could compete with Zhao Mama. Fortunately, she didn't have Zhao Mama's nagging and she didn't know how to make chicken soup. "You're the one who's lost a lot of weight." If the Long Fei Yi heard this, Zhao Mama's stew would probably be busy again. Han Yunshi knocked Su Xiaoyu's forehead. "Did you do anything bad during this time?" Su Xiaoyu blinked her large eyes and was about to answer when she suddenly exclaimed, "Bailey Mingxiang, are you crying? Although the masters are back, do you have to be this excited?" Bailey Mingxiang knew that this girl was putting on an act and that her words were full of thorns. She smiled and took advantage of the situation. "Of course I'm excited that Her Highness the Princess Consort is back." "So you're not excited that His Highness Duke of Qin is back?" "Humph, I'll tell His Highness Duke of Qin," Su Xiaoyu jokingly threatened. Bailey Mingxiang was about to explain when Han Yunshi stopped them. As Bailey Mingxiang, Han Yunshi didn't want Su Xiaoyu to know about her mother's death anniversary, so she didn't say much. She only instructed, "You two be quiet. Don't wake Xiao Mama up. Go to sleep." Bailey Mingxiang chased after her and asked, "Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant will bring you some snacks. What do you want to eat?" "Mistress, I'll make your favorite mango drink. It'll be ready soon. You rest first," Su Xiaoyu said and went to the kitchen. Bailey Mingxiang felt helpless. Han Yunshi asked her to come in and sit down. "Has Pill Fiend Pharmacy been doing well recently?" Han Yunshi asked seriously. Pill Fiend Pharmacy was originally managed by Gu Beiyue, but after Gu Beiyue left, it was handed over to Mu Ling. Since Mu Ling had left for a while, most of the matters in the pharmacy had fallen to Bailey Mingxiang. Bailey Mingxiang wasn't as capable as Mu Ling, but when it came to other matters, Bailey Mingxiang was much more reliable than Mu Ling. Esteemed Wang Fei, everything in the pharmacy is going well. Medicine City is supplying medicine on time, and all of the branches are running smoothly. It's just that a lot of merchants have come to see us recently to discuss large business deals, Bailey Mingxiang reported truthfully. Han Yinshi sneered, wouldn't they go to Medicine City to discuss large business deals? Why would they go to Pill Fiend Pharmacy? Bailey Mingxiang smiled, who else would Medicine City do business with besides Pill Fiend Pharmacy? Han Yunshi also smiled, the western region is in chaos. If these people don't want to sell medicine there, then they're from the military. They're here to prepare medicine. Then we won't sell. Bailey Mingxiang understood, but Han Yunshi said seriously, there's no such thing as not selling medicine in this world. Pill Fiend Pharmacy is not Medicine Ghost Valley. We'll sell them as much as they want, as long as they can afford the price. The war in the western regions had just begun, so the three nations should still have plenty of medicine in stock. If they were in a rush to prepare medicine so early, then it had to be Ningqing. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium had plenty of silver, so why wouldn't she take the chance to extort them? This servant understands. Bailey Mingxiang smiled, his red eyes bright and beautiful. Han Yunshi looked at Bailey Mingxiang and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. You're not destined to be a servant girl. You might as well be a shopkeeper at Pill Fiend Pharmacy in the future. Don't stay here to serve tea. Bailey Mingxiang sprang to his feet. No. Esteemed Wang Fei, we already agreed that you'd save Mingxiang's life, so Mingxiang would serve you for the rest of my life. Han Yunshi felt a little helpless. Actually, she quite liked having Bailey Mingxiang by her side. Compared to Su Xiaoyu, Bailey Mingxiang knew how to take care of the big picture and knew when to advance and retreat. Compared to Zhao Mama, Bailey Mingxiang was younger and more flexible. She needed servants like this by her side. But Bailey Mingxiang had more than just these advantages. It was a pity that she was only a servant girl. In the end, she was still the young miss of the Bailey clan. Han Yunshi had agreed to keep Bailey Mingxiang by her side because she thought that Bailey Mingxiang would grow tired of suffering and grow lonely. Who knew that she'd stay for so long? Bailey Mingxiang's words were overheard by Su Xiaoyu as she entered the room. Su Xiaoyu came over with a mango drink and said coldly, Bailey Mingxiang, don't you understand that master is chasing you away? Han Yunshi glared at her and said coldly, are you asking for a beating? Su Xiaoyu pursed her lips and offered up the mango drink. If master wants to beat you, she'll have to fill her stomach first. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant will take her leave first. Bailey Mingxiang didn't want to stay any longer. She was afraid that Su Xiaoyu wouldn't be able to hold back and reveal her secret. Although she had never admitted to it, as long as Su Xiaoyu revealed it, she wouldn't have the face to stay in the Duke of Qin's estate. She wouldn't even have the face to stay in the Bailey clan. Han Yunshi was tired as well. After downing the mango drink in large gulps, she had Su Xiaoyu withdraw as well, but the girl only murmured, Mistress, if you want her to leave, why do you have to be so ruthless? Do you want me to help you? Who said I'm chasing her away? I just want her to be the shopkeeper of Pill Fiend Pharmacy. If you don't watch your mouth, I'll sew it up for you. Han Yunshi narrowed her eyes as she coldly warned. If you sew it up, I won't be able to speak. Can you change it to something else? Su Xiaoyu chuckled as if she was joking. In reality, she swore to herself that she would definitely scheme to chase Bailey Mingxiang away. Therefore, she wanted to know what kind of punishment she would face when the time came so that she could mentally prepare herself. Han Yunshi was still tired and didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to the loft. Su Xiaoyu hurriedly pulled her back. Master, just before she could finish speaking, Han Yunshi interrupted her. If I chase you away, what will you think? Su Xiaoyu immediately became agitated. She grabbed Han Yunshi's hand so tightly that it hurt Han Yunshi. Little Yu Er's life was saved by Master. Little Yu Er will live and die as Master's ghost. In life or death, little Yu Er will never leave Master's side. Han Yunshi had just returned from the eerie bamboo forest after seeing a pile of corpses. Hearing about ghosts and whatnot made her hair stand on end. She rolled her eyes at Su Xiaoyu. Let go. Su Xiaoyu became even more nervous. Master, if you chase little Yu Er away, little Yu Er won't live anymore. I mean what I say. Then what right do you have to chase Bailey Mingxiang away? Han Yunshi countered with a question. It wasn't that Su Xiaoyu didn't have a reason. She just didn't want to say it. Everyone in the world thought that Qin Wangfei was the smartest woman in Cloud Realm, but in her eyes, her master was the stupidest woman in Cloud Realm. She couldn't even tell that Bailey Mingxiang liked His Highness Duke of Qin and even kept her by her side. You're still not letting go. Han Yunshi was dead tired. Leisurely Cloud Pavilion was a place for her to clear her mind. Why did she feel so vexed the moment she returned? No matter how bold Su Xiaoyu was, she didn't dare to be more unreasonable than Han Yunshi. She could only obediently let go. The next day, Han Yunshi wanted to sleep in, but who knew that she would be woken up by Zhao Mama early in the morning. Zhao Mama didn't dare to go upstairs, so she shouted from the staircase, Esteemed Wangfei, are you awake? Esteemed Wangfei, when did you come back? Why didn't you say anything? This old servant could have gone to buy an old hen to make soup. Esteemed Wangfei, are you awake? This old servant made His Highness's favorite breakfast. His Highness hasn't woken up yet. Why don't you go over and wake him up? Han Yunshi covered her head and pretended to be asleep. But when she heard this, she immediately lifted the covers and got out of bed. Wake Long Fei Yi up. That's a must. Definitely a must. She quickly washed up and went downstairs. When Zhao Mama saw her, her reaction was the same as Su Xiaoyu's last night. Zhao Mama was overjoyed. She looked her up and down and finally said, Esteemed Wangfei, you've lost weight. Han Yunshi immediately covered her mouth. Coldly, she warned, if you say the word lose weight again, I'll send you to the countryside to retire as hens. She didn't lose weight at all. She couldn't lose weight when she was with Long Fei Yi. She felt that she didn't lose to Duan Muyao in terms of looks, but she wasn't as skinny as Duan Muyao. Losing weight was a big problem in her heart. Zhao Mama was frightened and nodded repeatedly. Only then did Han Yunshi release her. Go prepare breakfast first. I'll go wake Long Fei Yi up. It had to be said that Zhao Mama was not used to hearing esteemed Wangfei directly call His Highness by his name. Su Xiaoyu glanced at Bailey Mingxiang and chuckled. Only Master can call His Highness by his name. Do you know why? Nonsense, because His Highness only allows esteemed Wangfei to call him that. Zhao Mama was grinning from ear to ear. She always felt that her days were meaningless when her two masters weren't at home. Now that her two masters were back, she could busy herself in the kitchens again. Bailey Mingxiang, what do you think? Su Xiaoyu was clearly doing this on purpose. Because His Highness only loves esteemed Wangfei. Bailey Mingxiang was very serious. She continued, don't go to Pill Fiend Pharmacy today. Stay here and wait upon esteemed Wangfei and His Highness. I'm leaving. She really did leave without hesitation. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoyu still snorted at her. Although Han Yunshi hadn't slept enough, she was still in good spirits. When she arrived at the door to Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters, she discovered that the door was locked from the inside and she couldn't enter. She knocked on the door a few times, but there was no response at all. Han Yunxi thought that Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters were so big that he might not be able to hear her knocking. It wasn't easy for her to wake up earlier than him and wake him up, but it was gone just like that. Actually, she was wrong. Long Fei Yi had always been very vigilant. Even when he was asleep, he still maintained a high level of vigilance. He was aware of every movement around his sleeping quarters. Just as she was about to leave, the shadow guard appeared. "Greetings, esteemed Wang Fei. Is His Highness still asleep?" she asked casually. "His Highness is at the ancestral hall," the shadow guard replied truthfully. "That guy woke up so early. Did he find a new clue?" Han Yunxi had just arrived at the bamboo forest when she saw Long Fei Yi coming out to greet her. "You found a clue?" she asked anxiously. Long Fei Yi tossed her a letter that shocked Han Yunxi. A blackmail letter. Actually, she was more inclined to believe that the Empress Dowager of Tianan country had hired assassins to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi so she could figure out Long Fei Ye's origins. But she never expected to receive a blackmail letter. So this had nothing to do with Long Fei Ye's origins. Han Yunxi opened the letter and read, 3 days after noon, bring the Profound Frost Sword to Lost Void Lake to redeem the person. You're only allowed to come alone. If you don't meet the deadline, you'll have to bear the consequences. What bold words. Han Yunxi said cold. Just who is it? Chapter 687. Only Long Fei Yi was allowed to go by himself. He even wanted Long Fei Ye's treasured sword, Profound Frost. If he missed the deadline, he didn't have to come. Take responsibility for the consequences. In just a short blackmail letter, there were 4 conditions. Back when Ning Qing kidnapped Gu Beiyue to threaten them, he hadn't spoken so boldly, nor did he have so many demands. Just who was this man? He wants you to exchange your treasured sword for a hostage. Could it be Zhang Qiuzi? Han Yunxi was puzzled. That's not very likely. He wouldn't go so far for Profound Frost, Long Fei Yi remarked. His master had given him Profound Frost, the first sword of Kenzo. Master had said that he and Profound Frost shared the same aura, so only he could wield it. Zhang Qiuzi should understand this logic. If it's not Zhang Qiuzi, then someone must have hired assassins from the city to kidnap the hostage. Then they came to talk business with you, Han Yunxi mused. Long Fei Yi agreed with her guess. After some hesitation, he added, this is very fishy. Why did they choose Grand Concubine Yi as their hostage? Grand Concubine Yi had long been forgotten by the world. Even Ning Qing knew to kidnap Gu Beiyue, but the real target should be Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Kidnapping Pill Fiend Pharmacy was much easier than kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi. Long Fei Yi added, if they hired someone to kidnap the hostage, they could only ask Lady Lang Yu and Qi Zonglin. It'd take more than silver to get those 2 to show up. It looks like we'll have to meet them to find out the truth, Han Yunxi said solemnly. 3 days. Make preparations and have Chu Shifeng hurry back. What if the other side had set up an ambush? What if they not only hired assassins to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi, but also lay in wait at Lost Void Lake for Long Fei Yi to walk right into their trap? What if the other side's true goal was to kill Long Fei Yi? This trip was extremely dangerous. Han Yunxi was very serious, but who knew that Long Fei Yi would raise his eyebrows and look at her, asking, this prince will not bring the Profound Frost Sword, but will bring you. Do you dare to follow? Han Yunxi smiled helplessly. Even if she was worried, she knew Long Fei Ye's temper. How could this man be threatened so easily? Approved. She smiled. What kind of danger had they not experienced? They had all walked out of the medicine-requesting cave alive, hadn't they? 3 days. In these 3 days, Long Fei Yi did not make any preparations. Everything was still going according to plan. His time was very tight to begin with. That day, he brought Han Yunxi to the Commander-in-Chief's manor in Zhongnan. Bailey Yuanlong oversaw the South Central Commander-in-Chief's office, and 6 other departments were set up. In reality, it was like a small imperial court, governing the fertile land of South Central. Although Bailey Yuanlong held great power, the other 5 out of the 6 departments were controlled by aristocratic families, and the position of minister was held by someone they nominated. The aristocratic families more or less kept Long Fei Yi in check. Aristocratic families had been officials for generations and were of noble status. These aristocratic families had not interfered with government affairs for a long time and only enjoyed their salaries. They were so arrogant that they disdained government officials and members of the imperial family. But now, the aristocratic family heads were actually recommending someone to take up the position of minister. This was enough to see the ambitions of these aristocratic families. Their most direct goal was to keep Long Fei Yi in check. However, Long Fei Yi was still fighting for power and had yet to establish an empire. Thus, they were only biding their time and did not dare to be too arrogant. When Long Fei Yi truly ascended the throne, these people would definitely want a share of the profits. They needed the new regime's recognition, respect their status, and continue to protect their interests. Bailey Yuanlong, the 5 aristocratic family heads, and the ministers of the 5 departments were all present in the main hall. As soon as Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi entered the hall, they all rose to pay their respects. Bailey Yuanlong was the most respectful and gave up his seat of honor. Long Fei Yi didn't have them rise immediately, but led Han Yunxi over. Han Yunxi discovered that the seat of honor was for one person, but there was another chair next to it. It was very out of place, probably prepared for her by Bailey Yuanlong. Great General Bailey really is considerate, she mused. Although she didn't have the concept of men being superior to women, everyone present was a man. Moreover, they were discussing matters of state, so she was too lazy to join in. She was more concerned with her pill fiend pharmacy and the kidnappers of Grand Concubine Yi. She couldn't figure out how Long Fei Yi could be so calm. Long Fei Yi had dragged her here, so she could only listen from the sidelines. When she reached her seat, she prepared to sit down, but Long Fei Yi didn't let go. He carried her to sit on the seat of honor, no, on his lap. In a flash, everyone in the room looked over. "What are you doing?" Han Yunxi murmured. Long Fei Yi only pretended not to hear as he wrapped his arms around her waist. Han Yunxi could clearly feel the 5 old clan heads' gazes turn fierce and fierce. Just what did Long Fei Yi want to do? Did he think there were too few people cursing her for being a disaster? Bailey Yuanlong shot Long Fei Yi meaningful looks, but Long Fei Yi pretended not to notice. Han Yunxi didn't understand, but Bailey Yuanlong knew all too well. These aristocratic families all wanted to cling on to His Highness Duke of Qin. Therefore, they all wanted to marry their legitimate daughters to him in the future. Although they knew His Highness Duke of Qin doted on Han Yunxi and couldn't change the fact that Han Yunxi was his official consort, they still planned to marry off their daughters to him. Once the Duke of Qin became emperor, he'd have an empress and 4 consorts in his harem. Han Yunxi might not be able to become empress even if she was his official consort. Thus, these people were filled with enmity towards Han Yunxi. His Highness Duke of Qin's actions were clearly for the 5 clan heads to see, warning them to give up any unnecessary thoughts. But Bailey Yuanlong was worried. After all, now wasn't the time. There was no need for His Highness Duke of Qin to offend these people. This was a critical period. If he didn't calculate wrong, the Duke of Qin would make his move this autumn. All of Cloud Realm continent would be thrown into turmoil. He was looking forward to the arrival of autumn, but he had to be careful now. Nothing could happen to the south-central regions. Seeing His Highness Duke of Qin so willfully embrace Han Yunshi in front of everyone, Bailey Yuanlong was both worried and angry. Of course, he didn't dare to be angry at the Duke of Qin, but Han Yunshi. This woman was indeed unusual, but she was still a source of calamity. "All of you, rise and sit," Long Fei finally spoke up. Everyone rose to their seats, but all eyes were on Han Yunshi's face. Han Yunshi felt uncomfortable and murmured, "Long Fei Yi, just what's going on?" "Nothing. I just don't like you sitting by yourself," Long Fei Yi murmured as he buried his head in her neck. Han Yunshi's heart warmed. She was about to speak when the Shao clan head stood up and clasped his hands in a graceful gesture. "This one has long heard of esteemed Wang Fei's illustrious name. Meeting you today is the good fortune of 3 lifetimes. Today, the 6 ministries have gathered here to discuss the war in the West and seek peace and prosperity for the South-Central regions. Since esteemed Wang Fei has come, you must have something to teach us. I don't know what esteemed Wang Fei has to say about Cloud Realm Continent's current situation. We are all ears." Aristocratic families really were different. Even their bows were so graceful and their words so refined. But so what? Han Yunshi knew they were here to cause trouble. In Han Yunshi's eyes, these people didn't have the bearing of an aristocratic family at all. Han Yunshi didn't want to get involved in politics because she was too busy. She didn't like it either. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi had pushed her into the position of calamity. She couldn't lose face for him, could she? Just based on those heartwarming words of his just now, she had to do her best. She had been uncomfortable sitting there, but now she relaxed and leaned lazily against Long Fei Yi's chest. "Then all of you listen well. This Wang Fei will only say this once." These words angered the elders so much that their faces turned green. The Shao clan head had been polite just then, but Han Yunshi really didn't hold back. When had they ever been so rude to? This woman was indeed spoiled and arrogant. If they didn't suppress her arrogance now, what would happen in the future? "Please speak." Shao family's patriarch suppressed his anger and stood, not sitting down. Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tianan are at war. For the south-central regions, this is a golden opportunity that cannot be missed. Han Yunshi's words made the Minister of Revenue laugh. "Esteemed Wang Fei, everyone knows about this." Naturally, the 5 clan heads couldn't mock Han Yunshi in public. They had to maintain the demeanor of an aristocratic family, but the ministers they'd elected were their spokespeople. "Then you know about it too?" Han Yunshi asked with interest. "Of course. Our South-Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate will be the fisherman who reaps the benefits from the war between the 3 countries." The Minister of Revenue said seriously. "What kind of fisherman's benefits are there?" Han Yunshi asked again. "Once the 3 countries are weakened, it'll be time for our South-Central regions to set out on an expedition. At that time, not only will we be able to swallow up Tianning's territory, we can also expand to Western Zhou and Tiannan." Han Yunshi interrupted him. "Everyone knows about this too, right? These are matters for the Ministry of War. You don't need to worry about them. What this Wang Fei wants to know is what your Ministry of Revenue is planning to do, and what benefits do you seek?" The Minister of Revenue didn't hesitate to say, "Our headquarters will naturally assist the Ministry of War in recruiting soldiers, buying horses, and preparing rations." The Ministry of Revenue was the most important thing in a country. It was in charge of the country's territory, farmland, household registration, taxes, salaries, and all other financial matters. It could be said that it was the country's finance minister. The Minister of Revenue's answer was full of confidence, but Han Yunshi only laughed out loud. "Doesn't everyone already know about this?" The Minister of Revenue had been choked twice by Han Yunxi, and she was even using his own words. He was very unwilling to accept this and retorted, "Then esteemed Wang Fei, what brilliant ideas do you have? Please enlighten me." "I was just about to say it, but you interrupted me, didn't you? Here, let's agree that you're not allowed to interrupt me this time. No matter how good your ideas are, I'll have to trouble you to endure until this Wang Fei finishes speaking." "Why don't you tell me again?" Han Yunxi asked patiently. The 5 clan heads' expressions turned even uglier. On the side, Bailey Yuanlong couldn't help but laugh. Meanwhile, Long Fei Yi was holding Han Yunxi's hand and patting her waist from time to time. It was obvious that he was in high spirits. "Esteemed Wang Fei, please enlighten me." The Minister of Revenue was the most embarrassed of all. He waited, refusing to believe that Han Yunxi would have any brilliant ideas. Han Yunxi said. Chapter 688. Han Yunxi said, "Your Excellency, it's still too early for you to recruit soldiers, buy horses, and prepare provisions. In this regard, instead of preparing for war, it's better for the Ministry of War to spend a month or 2 observing the situation and pondering whether there's a way to subdue the enemy without fighting. After all, war is the most hopeless solution. Moreover, even if we do send out troops in the end, it's just to clean up the mess. There's no need to prepare too much." Hearing this, the Minister of War felt helpless. Unfortunately, he was afraid of Bailey Yuanlong and didn't dare to speak. Unexpectedly, the Minister of Personnel next to him spoke up with a smile, "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's easy for you to say that. Based on the current situation," Han Yunxi unhappily interrupted, "are you the Minister of Revenue?" This lowly official is in charge of the Ministry of Personnel." The Minister of Personnel quickly revealed his identity. "This Wang Fei is instructing the Minister of Personnel, not talking to you. Why are you interrupting?" Han Yunxi coldly retorted. The Minister of Personnel was speechless and didn't know how to respond. He could only clasp his hands and say, "Yes, this lowly official has spoken out of turn." He was truly afraid that Han Yunxi would deal with him the same way she dealt with the Minister of Personnel. If he couldn't come up with a good plan, he'd be in trouble. "Since you've spoken out of turn, someone come, slap your mouth." Long Fei Yi suddenly spoke coldly. The main hall was very quiet to begin with only the sound of water dripping from the eaves outside the door. When Long Fei Yi spoke, the water on the roof seemed to have been frozen by his icy voice. There wasn't a single sound, and the entire hall was terrifyingly quiet. Trembling with fear, the Minister of Personnel looked towards the Patriarch who had recommended him for help. However, the Patriarch's brows were tightly knitted, as if he was dissatisfied, but he didn't say anything. Soon, an attendant came over. The Minister of Personnel hastily knelt and apologized, "Esteemed Wang Fei, this lowly official has spoken out of turn. This lowly official has been rude. Please be magnanimous and forgive this lowly official this time." Han Yunxi waved her hand, dismissing the attendant. The Minister of Personnel finally let out a sigh of relief. "Many thanks, esteemed Wang Fei." Bailey Yuanlong was extremely worried as he watched from the side. He was afraid that Han Yunxi would let down His Highness Duke of Qin and make a fool of herself in front of the clan lords. Now that things had reached such an awkward state, if she didn't say something that could convince everyone, the 5 clans wouldn't let it go so easily. The facts proved that Han Yunxi was worthy of Long Fei Ye's favoritism and love. Her words made everyone present stunned and speechless. They were sincerely convinced. She said, "With the war between the 3 kingdoms, there will definitely be a lot of high-quality resources flowing out, either to northernly or the central and southern regions. The central and southern regions are the most stable places and the most suitable places to live. Therefore, These high-quality resources will all flow to the central and southern regions. As she spoke, she asked seriously, "What do you mean by high-quality resources?" They were people and things. Let's talk about people first. Who are they? Everyone looked at Han Yunxi, extremely curious and surprised. They didn't quite understand what she meant, but they were all very interested. The term high-quality resources that Han Yunxi spoke of was something they had never heard of before. Han Yunxi answered her own question. People are talents from all 360 professions: farming, husbandry, sewing, weaving, masonry, iron, earth, wood, medicine, wine, cloth dyeing, kiln burning, and all sorts of other professions. There are also scholars and famous scholars. For the sake of avoiding the chaos of war, they can only flee to the south-central regions. When Han Yunxi spoke to this point, the corners of Long Fei Ye's mouth had already curled up in amusement and appreciation. Then let's talk about things. What are things? Rare beasts, gold, stones, and antiques. Heroes emerge in troubled times, and treasures emerge in troubled times. These things will either flow to the central and southern regions with the refugees, or they will be sold, Han Yunxi said seriously. Everyone nodded unconsciously. This was indeed the truth. Instead of rushing to recruit soldiers and buy horses, why don't the Ministry of Revenue think about how to retain these high-quality resources, how to seize the opportunity to make good use of these resources, how to gather treasures, how to retain people to strengthen oneself, and how to prosper 100 industries. The prosperity of 100 industries is the foundation of a strong country's stability. A strong country can subdue the enemy's soldiers without fighting. When Han Yunxi finished speaking, the entire place became even quieter. It was so quiet that even the sound of falling leaves could be heard. No one would have thought that such a pampered and arrogant woman lying lazily in the Duke of Qin's embrace could actually say such words. She wasn't the least bit inferior to the grown men present. How was she an imperial concubine? She was practically a talented general. Moreover, she was a genius. In the history of Cloud Realm continent, every time there was a war, all the countries would think about sending out weapons and rations. No one had ever considered the things that Han Yunxi had said. The curve of Long Fei Ye's mouth was very beautiful. He finally let go of Han Yunxi's small waist, but he didn't let go of her. His hands went past her waist and clapped. Good. Excellent. Esteemed Wang Fei is brilliant. This general admires you. Bailey Yuanlong was overjoyed. His hanging heart finally settled down. He thought that even if esteemed Wang Fei really was a source of trouble for His Highness, he would accept it, submit, and submit. Brilliant. Truly brilliant. I was right to come today, hee hee. Listening to esteemed Wang Fei's words is better than studying for 10 years. Esteemed Wang Fei, seeing is better than hearing. This old man can be considered to have learned something today. Lord Gao, esteemed Wang Fei has pointed out the way for the Ministry of Revenue. You must go back and think about it carefully. If you miss this opportunity, this old man will hold you accountable. In the future, I ask esteemed Wang Fei to give me many pointers, many pointers. The attitudes of the 5 patriarchs had completely changed. Of course, they didn't forget that behind Han Yunxi was Long Fei Yi, so they flattered Long Fei Yi as well. The 6 ministers asked many questions, and Han Yunxi answered them all fluently. Coming from the modern era, she had gathered thousands of years of wisdom in her brain. Although she wasn't a professional when it came to governing a country, her perspective and foresight were far beyond what anyone present could imagine. It wasn't until noon that everyone asked to be excused. Long Fei Yi didn't have any intention of keeping them for lunch, so they were quite tactful. During lunch, Bailey Yuanlong found an excuse to invite Long Fei Yi to the side hall. His Highness's eyes really can't be wrong. Esteemed Wang Fei, before Bailey Yuanlong could finish, Long Fei Yi interrupted him coldly, is there anything else? Hadn't he heard enough flattery this morning? Long Fei Yi was already tired of it. Bailey Yuanlong had no choice but to be blunt. Your Highness, it's too early to offend the aristocratic families. Although esteemed Wang Fei had convinced the patriarchs today, they were only convinced because of today's topic. Esteemed Wang Fei's performance today would only make them even more dissatisfied and wary. What? I've already given them the 5 ministries of civil service, rights, punishment, and works. Are they still not satisfied? Long Fei Yi questioned. He couldn't make a move for the time being, nor did he have the time to make a move against these aristocratic families. However, he could still suppress their arrogance and give them a warning. Bailey Yuanlong was speechless. Long Fei Yi said, Bailey Yuanlong, these people aren't stupid. They won't dare to act rashly before this prince proclaims himself as an emperor. This prince is just giving them a reminder to stop having any ideas about Han Yunxi. Long Fei Ye's real purpose in suppressing the aristocratic family's arrogance was to let Han Yunxi establish her might. Han Yunxi hadn't disappointed him today. When they returned to the dining hall, Han Yunxi was chewing slowly. When she saw Long Fei Yi and Bailey Yuanlong come over, she hurriedly called out, General Bailey, come and eat with us. Bailey Yuanlong didn't have the guts to eat at the same table as Long Fei Yi, so he found an excuse to slip away. Han Yunxi was helpless. She'd originally wanted to talk about some things in the South Central military governor's manor. After all, there were outsiders present, so it wasn't appropriate for her to say too much. Long Fei Yi, I offended all those aristocratic families just now. Are you happy now? Han Yunxi asked with a smile. Although she'd been flattered all morning, she could clearly see through those old men's true colors. I'm happy. If you don't make enemies, how can you establish your might? Long Fei Yi countered. Han Yunxi smiled helplessly. All right, you win. She was born to offend people easily, so one more time wouldn't make a difference. Even if today's matter hadn't happened, she'd already offended them all with her status as Qin Wangfei. What was the most glorious thing a daughter of an aristocratic family could do? It was nothing more than marrying into an imperial family. Han Yunxi understood the thoughts of those family heads very well. Long Fei Yi, Qin Wangfei, it really isn't easy to be Qin Wangfei. Han Yunxi sighed with emotion. Scared? Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi didn't hesitate at all. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. Long Fei Yi was very satisfied. He scooped up a spoonful of hot soup and fed it to her. Han Yunxi drank it all in one gulp. It was so natural that it seemed to have become a habit. This was the first time the surrounding servant girls were serving His Highness Duke of Qin and esteemed Wang Fei, so they were already nervous. When they saw this scene, their hearts all sped up. Heavens, this legendary cold-faced duke actually dotes on women so much. They didn't have the guts to envy Han Yunxi, so they could only envy the ladle in Long Fei Ye's hands. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi chatted as they ate. It had been a long time since they'd sat down and enjoyed a meal together. Find some time to explain the situation at Pill Fiend Pharmacy clearly. Leave Cloud Realm Trade Consortium alone, Long Fei Yi said. Ning Jing doesn't have time to discuss the snow mountains with Northernly. Even if they do, we just need to find someone to spread the news to Medical City. The medical community won't dare to use Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's medicines then. Han Yunxi was quite confident in this matter. Long Fei Yi nodded. There are 3 major grain-producing regions in the central region scattered across the 3 prefectures. Jiangnan has 4 major grain-producing fields. I wanted to take you there at first, but Tang Li's affairs delayed things and there's no time left. Save it for a future tour of the south. Han Yunxi had no objections. I'll be looking forward to it. She'd been in Cloud Realm Continent for so long and had always yearned for Jiangnan. All of Cloud Realm Continent's sceneries and delicacies were concentrated there, so it was a wonderful place. Even Jiangnan's Plum Blossom Sea wasn't the real Jiangnan, but north of it, where it intersected with South Ning. I'll leave the estimates of the 7 major grain-producing regions to the Ministry of Revenue. I'll leave these to you, Long Fei said before taking out 3 thick account books. Han Yunxi didn't understand how this guy had gotten so many accounts. But she soon understood after flipping through them. These were none other than the accounts of all of Long Fei's businesses in Cloud Realm Continent. None of them were small businesses, but large ones. More than 60% of them were located in the central and southern regions. Moreover, most of them were restaurants, hotels, and private banks, followed by fertile fields. Han Yunxi finally understood where Long Fei's money came from. Although they couldn't compare to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, if they were properly managed, they might be able to rival the consortium in the future. Han Yunxi stared and stared before she suddenly looked up at Long Fei. Hold on, Long Fei, are you giving all your businesses to me? This guy, first he wanted me to establish my power in front of the central and southern region's aristocratic families, then he gave me all his businesses. He seems to be preparing for something. Chapter 689. There's an accountant in charge of the accounts, Long Fei intoned. I'll leave all of this to you in the future. Han Yunxi grew suspicious and scooted closer to ask in a low voice, Long Fei, are you planning to run away? He's so strange that Han Yunxi felt uneasy. She had a feeling that he'd disappear as soon as he finished everything. Long Fei stroked her bangs and smiled dotingly. If I'm running away, I'll definitely take you with me. But not if I'm running for my life. Han Yunxi slapped his hands away. Long Fei, just what are you planning? You've managed Pill Fiend Pharmacy so well that your lordship's businesses are all counting on you, Long Fei teased. I'm not just talking about that. Han Yunxi paused before asking, do you have any plans for this trip to Celestial Mountain? Han Yunxi couldn't help but feel that Long Fei's actions were all for the sake of going up Celestial Mountain. He seemed to be in danger, so he had to prepare everything for her. A complicated look flickered past Long Fei's eyes before he said, this trip will be dangerous. If I can't leave the mountain by mid-autumn, can you go down first and help me take over the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to deal with the changes in the west? Because of Duan Miao. Han Yunxi grew anxious. Would Long Fei make an enemy out of Kenzo because of Duan Miao? In her impression, he still respected Kenzo's master very much, even with Duan Miao's interference. Kenzo was Cloud Realm Continent's #1 expert with unparalleled martial arts skills. If her guesses were right, then they'd be in real danger. It has nothing to do with her. Zhang Qiuzi is the biggest problem. Long Fei said. Actually, Zhang Qiuzi was only second in rank. The biggest problem was himself and his seal. If they could break the seal on Celestial Mountain this time, then capturing Zhang Qiuzi would be a cinch. In the Jianghu martial arts world, the level of one's martial arts was directly determined by the winner and the loser was in the wrong. It was not as complicated and changeable as the politics of the imperial court. As for Duan Miao, he had never taken her seriously. Moreover, he had no intention of letting her return to Sky Mountain. As long as Duan Miao didn't return to Celestial Mountain, there would be no conflict between him and his master. As long as he took control of Celestial Mountain, no one in Cloud Realm Continent's Wulin would dare make trouble for the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate. In the future, he could also gather the Wulin's strength and take over the 2 assassin cities. He had always known that the power of the Jianghu was not to be underestimated. This time, Duanmu Yao had mobilized the power of the Jianghu to cause trouble for Ningqing. This made him value the power of the Jianghu even more. This trip to Sky Mountain was of great importance and had far-reaching effects. It was the best time for him to go to Sky Mountain during the 3 months of war. If he didn't make a move now, heaven knows whether Duanmu Yao and Zhang Qiuzi would join forces with Zhu Nixia. Zhang Qiuzi had always wanted to borrow the power of the secular world to seize power on Celestial Mountain. Zhu Nixia and Duanmu Yao had long been in cahoots. If Zhu Nixia joined forces with Zhang Qiuzi, then things would be out of his control. Thus, this trip was unavoidable. If he couldn't break the seal, then things would get troublesome. Both he and Han Yunxi would be in danger. Thus, if he couldn't leave the mountain by mid-autumn, he would have to send Han Yunxi down first. He'd already arranged everything. This time, he'd come back to South Ning's commander-in-chief's estate to tie up loose ends. If he couldn't come back, Han Yunxi would be safest at South Ning's commander-in-chief's estate. She controlled all of his properties there, so even if the 5 great clans wanted to make things difficult for her, she had enough chips to contend against them. Although she looked like she was taking control of the situation in his place, there was nothing important to take care of. I'm not leaving the mountain. Leave the affairs of the South Central region to Bailey Yuanlong. I went up the mountain with you, so I'm going down with you. If you're not leaving, I'm not leaving either. Han Yunxi was very serious. You don't know martial arts. You'll only get in your lordship's way if you stay on Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Yi was cruel. Han Yunxi wasn't someone who could be defeated with a single sentence. Even if you get in my way, I'll blame it on you. In any case, if you have the skills to take me up the mountain, then you have to have the skills to come down with me. How about you don't take me up the mountain? Alright, then you don't have to go, Long Fei Yi said mildly, his gaze soft and doting. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi was furious. How could such a hateful person exist? How could he say such heartless words in such a gentle voice? Long Fei Yi was as gentle as ever as he fed her soup. Han Yunxi huffed and drank it all in one gulp before continuing, Alright, I won't go. I'll just wait for you in South Ning. After some thought, she added, if you don't come back, I'll have the South Central Region's commander-in-chief's estate disband, along with Chu Shifeng and the rest. I'll sell all your properties to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium at a cheap price, then wander the world with Gu. Han Yunxi's words were both a warning and a fit of anger. And also, I'll go to the Tang clan. Take, Han Yunxi, my parents have already passed away. I want to take you to Celestial Mountain so Master can see you. Long Fei Ye's eyes were filled with tenderness. Han Yunxi abruptly shut her mouth. She didn't want to meet his eyes, but she couldn't help but sink into them. How could she refuse such tenderness? How could she say no to a reason like that? Moreover, she really didn't want to go. Moreover, she'd been looking forward to going with him to Celestial Mountain for a long, long time. Moreover, it was a dangerous trip. How could she not go with him? Han Yunxi stared at Long Fei Yi with a deep gaze without a word. Long Fei Yi smiled helplessly as he stroked her bangs again. After mid-autumn, the 3 countries' grain and medicine supplies will run out. By then, someone will need to take charge of the South Central Region's commander-in-chief's estate. In the end, Bailey Yuanlong is a military general, so he's not as smart as you. Your lordship may only leave the mountain a little later, not forever. So speaking, he pinched Han Yunxi's chin and forced her to look up at him. Han Yunxi, what nonsense are you thinking? You want to wander the world with Gu? Why didn't you say so earlier? Do you believe that your lordship won't break his dog legs right now? At this moment, Gu had just managed to avoid Mu Linger and was currently basking in the sun under his black robe. He suddenly shivered and poked his head out of the robe to look at the scorching sun in the sky with a confused expression. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei Yi for a while before saying, "You said it yourself that this trip will be dangerous." Long Fei Yi took advantage of the situation and said, "That's why we won't be able to leave the mountain so soon." "I don't care. I'm not leaving the mountain anyway." Han Yunxi was rarely so willful. Long Fei Yi suddenly frowned. He didn't say anything and just stared at Han Yunxi. It had to be said that his cold and stern gaze frightened all the servants around them. Each and every one of them was scared witless, afraid that they'd get into trouble if they weren't careful. However, Han Yunxi also frowned and stared back at him with a cold gaze. The two of them stared at each other like this for a long time. Finally, Han Yunxi stood up and turned to leave. "Wait." Long Fei Yi called her back. "There's no room for discussion. I can find someone to entrust with the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate. There's no need for me to come back and do it myself," Han Yunxi said cold. The person in her heart was none other than Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue had worked in Tianning's Imperial Physician Courtyard for many years and always maintained a virtuous personality. This was enough to prove that he wasn't just skilled in medicine. As long as they spent some time analyzing the current situation and telling him their plans, she believed that Gu Beiyue wouldn't disappoint them. She was about to leave when Long Fei Yi asked gently, "Han Yunxi, do you still want to eat? Come here, don't starve your stomach." Han Yunxi stopped in her tracks. How was she supposed to get angry when this man was like this? How was she supposed to keep arguing? Her eyes suddenly stung and she wanted to cry. Before she could turn back, Long Fei Yi had already walked over and hugged her from behind. "All right, you win. Let's eat." Han Yunxi turned around and looked at him seriously. "You're not allowed to lie to me. Not allowed to lie to me." It wasn't like he hadn't lied to her before. Long Fei Yi kissed her lightly on the lips as a seal. "You'll follow your lordship wherever I go, all right?" Han Yunxi finally smiled. "All right, tie me up with a rope." At these words, the surrounding servants all sucked in a cold breath. Qin Wangfei was too impudent. She actually called His Highness Duke of Qin a dog. However, Long Fei Yi didn't get angry. He pulled Han Yunxi back to their seats and continued eating. The two of them had a tacit understanding not to mention what had just happened. Han Yunxi wasn't so stupid. She was already on her guard and told herself that she had to be careful around mid-autumn. She had to keep a close eye on Long Fei Yi. "You're not going to prepare for the extortion?" Han Yunxi changed the topic. She had the courage to go with Long Fei Yi, but she was still rather worried about this matter. However, Long Fei Yi didn't take this matter to heart at all. They didn't even know who the other party was. Wasn't Long Fei Yi too calm? "There's nothing to prepare," Long Fei Yi said indifferently. "What if the other party not only hired Madame Lang Yu, but also Qi Zonglin? Wouldn't we be sending ourselves to our deaths?" Han Yunxi wasn't joking. When they were looking for Mama Su, they had been attacked by Leng Shuangshuang and Qi Yao Tian. With Long Fei Ye's current abilities, dealing with Leng Shuangshuang and Qi Yao Tian was more than enough. However, bringing along someone who didn't know martial arts to deal with two city lords at the same time was truly courting death. "This prince will take you there. When the time comes, no matter who we meet, this prince will defend while you attack. We'll kill them all with poison. How does that sound?" Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi's eyes immediately lit up like a searchlight. Back then, when she and Long Fei Yi teamed up, it was more than enough to deal with the Chu family's crazy driving arrow technique. As long as it wasn't the driving arrow technique, Long Fei Yi could bring her close to the enemy. As long as she closed the distance, there were many ways she could use poison. She didn't necessarily need to use hidden needles. "All right." Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She was even more curious as to who would be so unlucky as to face Long Fei Yi and her for the first time. With Long Fei Yi's arrangements, Han Yunxi felt much more at ease. After the meal, they drank tea with Bailey Yuanlong for a while before Long Fei Yi accompanied Han Yunxi to Pilfiend Pharmacy. They entered through a side door. To enter through the side door, they had to pass by the infirmary. The infirmary was very quiet in the afternoon as the patients were all resting. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi lightened their footsteps. Unexpectedly, when they arrived at the window of the infirmary, they heard a teasing voice. "Miss, you're really pretty. What's your name?" Han Yunxi didn't recognize this voice, but she was certain it wasn't someone from Pilfiend Pharmacy. Could it be that a patient was taking liberties with another patient? She suspiciously peeked in through the window, but Long Fei Yi didn't seem interested. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi was shocked to see someone provoking Bailey Mingxiang. Han Yunxi grabbed Long Fei Yi's hand and whispered, "Look, that person is so bold." Chapter 690. Long Fei Yi peeked into the infirmary and saw Bailey Mingxiang changing the dressing of a young man. The man looked to be in his early 20s and was dressed well. It was obvious at a glance that he came from a wealthy and respectable background. However, the frivolity and wretchedness between his brows made anyone who saw him know that he was a lecherous wastrel. Bailey Mingxiang finished treating the man's wound and was about to stand up when the man grabbed her wrist. Bailey Mingxiang struggled a few times, but couldn't break free. Without a doubt, she'd been teased. That's the 7th young master of the Shao clan, Shao Chong, An's favorite grandson. Long Fei Yi recognized the man at a glance. Han Yunxi knew the Shao clan because she'd met them this morning. They were the head of the 5 great clans and had the highest status. So what? He dares to tease Pilfiend Pharmacy's people. He must be tired of living. Han Yunxi was about to enter when a bag of medicinal ingredients suddenly hit 7th young Master Zhao's wound. Ah! 7th young Master Zhao immediately let go and clutched his knee. "It hurts like hell." "Who is it? Are you looking to die?" Su Xiaoyu walked in with another bag of medicine in her hands. "Your great aunt is me." Even Bailey Mingxiang sucked in a cold breath, much less 7th young Master Zhao. Su Xiaoyu was younger than 7th young Master Zhao by more than 10 years, but this little girl was calling herself great aunt. Han Yunxi almost laughed out loud. She wasn't planning to go in, but wanted to watch the show from the sidelines. "Call the guards over." "Let's go," Long Fei Yi said. He was too busy to pay attention to such trivial matters. "No need. That little great aunt can handle it." "You go first." Han Yunxi was in a good mood. This was her first time seeing Su Xiaoyu help Bailey Mingxiang. Long Fei Yi didn't rush her, but left. At noon, he'd received news that Gu Beiyue had returned to Pilfiend Pharmacy with Gu and the rest. He could use this chance to talk to Gu Beiyue about Chu Shifeng's situation. After Long Fei Yi left, Han Yunxi hid outside the window and watched quietly. Not long after, all the patients in the infirmary woke up. Su Xiaoyu and 7th young Master Zhao's voices were louder than the other. "Stinky girl, where did you come from? How dare you talk back to me? Do you know who I am?" 7th young Master Zhao actually stood up. Bailey Mingxiang looked at the bleeding wound on his leg in disbelief. This guy was clearly being carried in, and he kept mumbling that his legs were going to be crippled. How could he stand up now? What a good actor he is. "I don't know who you are, this is not a brothel." When Su Xiaoyu said this, Bailey Mingxiang got angry. How could she talk like this? Is this little girl going to scold me as well? But Su Xiaoyu only said, "If you dare to touch her again, do you believe that I'll poison you to death?" "You!" Which eye of yours saw me touch her? I wouldn't want her even if you gave her to me. Seventh young master Xiao said disdainfully. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Xiaoyu threw the medicine bag in her hand at his head, scattering its powder all over his face. Cheap wench. Seventh young master Xiao was furious as he lunged at Su Xiaoyu. Someone come. Someone come. Bailey Mingxiang shouted. But Su Xiaoyu only said cold, what are you muttering about? I can handle this beast by myself. The guards soon arrived. Su Xiaoyu waved her hand, indicating for them to withdraw. She leaned to the side to avoid seventh young master Zhao's claws and pulled Bailey Mingxiang far away. Bailey Mingxiang looked at Su Xiaoyu's small hand tightly holding her big hand. A strange feeling flashed through her heart, but she couldn't explain it clearly. She realized that this child's hand was especially cold. Seventh young master Zhao's head was covered in powder. He rubbed his eyes and lunged at them again, but he still missed. After a few rounds, seventh young master Xiao flew into a rage out of humiliation. Do you know who I am? I am the seventh young master of the Xiao family. How can you use the two words seventh young master? Suddenly, a crisp voice was heard. A figure flipped over the window sill and came in. This person was none other than Mu Ling. Han Yunqi was very surprised. She didn't expect Mu Ling to come back. If that was the case, then Gu should have returned to Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Mu Ling, you're in charge of Pill Fiend Pharmacy now, right? These two lowly slaves actually joined hands to slander this young master and even threw medicine at me. How vile! How does Pill Fiend Pharmacy teach its servants? This young master will take these two away, otherwise, this matter won't be over. Seventh young master Xiao was very familiar with Mu Ling, but he didn't know that Su Xiaoyu and Bailey Mingxiang were Qin Wangfei's people. Mu Ling looked at him disdainfully and sneered, didn't you hear what this young miss said? Seventh young master Xiao really didn't notice. He only saw that Mu Ling's attitude was strange, so he asked, what do you mean? Without a word, Mu Ling kicked him squarely on the wound on seventh young master Zhao's leg. Finally, seventh young master Xiao lost his footing and fell on his butt. Su Xiaoyu looked at him with incomparable admiration and wanted nothing more than to give him another kick. Bailey Mingxiang, on the other hand, was very worried. This person was the young master of the Xiao family. Would they cause trouble for esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness Duke of Qin? Mu Ling looked down at him and coldly warned, this young miss already warned you 2 months ago. If this young miss hears you call yourself seventh young master again, you'll have to bear the consequences. Han Yunqi shook her head as she watched from outside the window. She thought, just how much does Mu Ling like Gu? She doesn't even allow others to call him seventh young master. Truly, crazy. She originally thought that seventh young master Xiao would flip out, but who knew that he would actually shrink back? He looked resentfully at Mu Ling and said, I just forgot. I won't do it again. I won't do it again. Han Yunqi and Bailey Mingxiang were in disbelief. What was going on? Su Xiaoyu, on the other hand, worshipped Mu Ling even more. Humph, Mu Ling sneered, fine. Then how are you going to pay for hurting my people? Don't think that I don't know what's going on. Mu Ling was the seventh young master Zhao's nemesis. He actually didn't argue with her. He just waved his hand and said, fine, fine. Hurry up and find someone to treat my wound. I'll leave. Is that okay? Mu Ling didn't let Bailey Mingxiang and Su Xiaoyu go. Instead, she carried the seventh young master Xiao to a chair and dressed his wound herself. For the rest of the time, the infirmary was filled with cries and screams. In the end, the seventh young master Xiao didn't walk out. He was carried out on a stretcher. As soon as he left, Bailey Mingxiang hurriedly asked, Miss Ling, why are you? The Xiao clan's young master seems to be afraid of you. Because he has erectile dysfunction. I have to give him medicine every month. The seventh young master Xiao kept asking Mu Ling, to keep it a secret, but Mu Ling, casually said it out loud. The other patients in the room all looked at her. Bailey Mingxiang smiled. Thank you, Miss Ling, Sister Ling, you can actually cure erectile dysfunction. Please teach me. Su Xiaoyu was very excited. Mu Ling, slapped her on the forehead. You are so young. Why do you know so much? Su Xiaoyu wanted to beg again, but Mu Ling, dragged them to the side hall. Han Yunxi was confused, so she hurriedly ran after them. Mu Ling, asked coldly, I was just gone for a while. How did the big bag of yellow lotus and the big bag of licorice disappear? How did you use them? This was the headquarters of Pill Fiend Pharmacy. It wasn't appropriate for outsiders to take care of the prescriptions. Mu Ling had been taking care of it herself. Before she left, she handed it over to Bailey Mingxiang and Su Xiaoyu. Han Yunxi frowned when she heard that. Yellow lotus was actually an expensive medicinal material. In modern times, people used the technology of planting under the forest to increase its survival rate and yield. Even so, it still took 5 to 6 years to harvest it. After harvesting it, it had to be carefully dried before it could be stored and used. In ancient times, there were wild herbs, but they were few in number. Pill Fiend Pharmacy had to carefully select the best of the best, so it wasn't easy to get them. As for licorice, it was mostly wild. Only the Wang clan in Medicine City had the technology to plant it. 9 out of 10 prescriptions required licorice. The amount of licorice used was so large that the wild ones were over-harvested and the artificial ones weren't enough. That was why it wasn't easy to get this medicine. How did they use up the 2 bags so quickly? Could it be that these 2 people stole the medicine? Han Yunxi rejected the idea. What's going on? Mu Ling, suddenly asked angrily. Bailey Mingxiang and Su Xiaoyu lowered their heads and didn't say anything. You won't say? Mu Ling, raised her eyebrows. It's all her fault. She insisted on adding licorice to every prescription, saying that she was afraid the medicine would be too bitter for the patients to eat, Su Xiaoyu said coldly. Bailey Mingxiang, you have such a good heart. Why don't you become a bodhisattva? What are you doing by staying by esteemed Wang Fei's side? Bailey Mingxiang hurriedly explained, Miss Ling, the weather has changed over the past month and many children have fallen ill. The prescriptions for the medicine didn't add much licorice, and many of them were especially sour and bitter, so Bailey Mingxiang hesitated for a moment. I was the one who secretly added the licorice. I carefully read the prescriptions and knew that increasing the amount of licorice wouldn't have any effect. I'll pay for this loss. You don't even want to leave your name after doing such a good deed. Su Xiaoyu sneered. Bailey Mingxiang was angry this time. Miss Ling, it was this girl who used Coptis chinensis. I must tell you this. If the people who came to get the medicine said something that made her unhappy, she added Coptis chinensis to the medicine. Although it didn't harm the patient's life, it was too immoral. If someone who knew medicine saw through it, our Pill Fiend Pharmacy's reputation would be ruined. Han Yunxi rolled her eyes several times when she heard this. What should she say? Bailey Mingxiang and Su Xiaoyu were truly a perfect match. How could they do such a thing? How could it be ruined? Adding Coptis chinensis is good for the patients, but it's also detoxification. I gave such expensive medicine to them for free, so they should be thanking me. Su Xiaoyu was still trying to quibble. Mu Ling was about to go crazy. She was silent for a long time before she finally said angrily, "If it weren't for Han Yunqi's sake, this miss wouldn't have let you off. This miss will give you 10 days. If you can't get the licorice and Coptish Chinensis by then, you just wait and see. Don't mention Han Yunqi, this miss won't even give face to Long Fei Yi." Mu Ling left angrily after she finished speaking. Su Xiaoyu muttered, His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't care about such trivial matters. After she finished speaking, she ignored Bailey Mingxiang and turned to leave. Bailey Mingxiang looked at her back for a long time before he finally called out, "Lass, thank you for just now." He didn't know if Su Xiaoyu heard him, but she continued walking without looking back. Han Yunqi didn't have time to pay attention to this matter. She was relieved to leave it to Mu Ling. She was about to chase after Mu Ling when someone patted her shoulder from behind. "Poison lass, shoo." Chapter 691. Han Yunqi turned around and saw nothing but darkness. Gu was dressed in a large black robe with a hood and a mask covering his face, completely hiding himself. "Long time no see. Are you safe and sound?" Han Yunqi asked jokingly, "When did you come back?" "I just arrived this morning." Gu said, "I brought Gu Beiyue with me. When you go back, tell Mu Linger to ask Gu Beiyue if there's anything she doesn't understand about the pharmacopoeia. If Gu Beiyue doesn't understand, then write a letter to the King of Medicine." Han Yunqi crossed her arms and leaned against the wall. And then I'll go look for the fire and metal of 10,000 poisons." Gu was very serious. "Then why don't you tell her yourself?" Han Yunqi asked. "That girl is too annoying. She can pester me for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep, constantly asking about this medicine. If I stay with her any longer, I'll definitely go crazy." Gu thought for a moment, then asked in a low voice, "Poison lass, do you think that brat suspects something? Has the Mu family's matter been resolved?" Han Yunqi changed the topic. Madame Lianxin had sacrificed herself to make a final effort for the Mu family. Now that Medical City had expelled Madame Lianxin and head Elder Ling from the city, these two notorious people had become street rats that everyone wanted to beat up. They couldn't live anywhere. If Gu didn't give the Mu family some benefits, how could Madame Lianxin let the matter rest? "I've talked to that girl. She'll become the head of the Mu family, and the Council of Elders will give the Mu family 2 pieces of land. Whether or not the Mu family can be saved will depend on that girl's sincerity." Gu said, then added, "In any case, we've already talked to her about this matter on behalf of Long Fei Yi. It has nothing to do with me." A complicated look flitted through Han Yunqi's eyes. "If she doesn't take it seriously, I'm afraid Madame Lianxin will come knocking on our door." "That has nothing to do with me," Gu said again. Han Yunqi deliberately looked at him with disdain. "If you don't like her, why did you provoke her?" Gu also looked at Han Yunqi with disdain. "I provoke you every day. Why don't you like me?" Han Yunqi couldn't be bothered and turned to leave. Gu quickly stopped her and looked at her with even more disdain. "I'm just joking. Why are you so serious? Do you have any clues about the fire and metal of 10,000 poisons?" Han Yunqi asked seriously. Gu shook his head. He had actually been searching for a long time, but there was no progress. Metal was hard to find, let alone the metal of 10,000 poisons. As for fire, he was completely clueless. However, he was very determined. "Even if there are no clues, we still have to look. I have an appointment with Long Fei Yi." Gu and Long Fei Yi had 2 appointments. The first was that Gu would help Long Fei Yi hide the matter about Mute Granny. Long Fei Yi would help Gu hide the secret of his undying body. The second was that Gu would help Long Feiyi find a way to cure the perplexing butterfly illusion. Long Feiyi would help Gu destroy Medical City. Of these two agreements, Han Yunxi only knew the second one. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi had a lot of things to do. They were very busy every day. However, Gu only wanted to do one thing in his life. He always remembered his appointment with Long Feiyi. When are you leaving? Han Yunxi knew that she couldn't make him stay. She could only secretly mourn for Mulinger. Now, if it weren't for the fact that he wanted to see Han Yunxi, Gu would have left in the morning. He asked, "Are you planning to stay in Ningnan for a long time? After the war between the three countries is over, we're going to Tian Shan Mountain. I think we'll be staying there for a while," Han Yunxi said in a low voice. Tian Shan Mountain. Why are you going there? Gu was curious. Is Long Feiyi going there to practice martial arts? It's not the right time, right? Han Yunxi looked at Gu and smiled bitterly. This guy was very smart, but he never cared about the current situation. Anyone who cared about the current situation would have guessed that Long Feiyi went to Tian Shan Mountain to take advantage of the martial arts world's power. If Gu Beiyue was indifferent to fame and fortune, then Gu was someone who didn't have the concept of fame and fortune. He always lived in his own free and easy world, doing whatever he wanted without any restraints. Han Yunxi actually liked him a lot, but this kind of like had nothing to do with romance. Gu rubbed his chin and pondered for a while. He said seriously, "Actually, there's no need to practice Long Feiyi's martial arts. If I were him, I would take you to eat and drink well. Why would you need to practice martial arts? I'd just like him to practice martial arts." Han Yunxi was always on Long Feiyi's side. Han Yunxi, what exactly do you like about Long Feiyi? Although Gu was smiling, Han Yunxi was inexplicably stunned. She hadn't heard Gu call her by her name for a long time. I don't know, Han Yunxi said lightly. Useless. Gu was disgusted. He took out a palm-sized blood-red wild mushroom from his black robe and stuffed it into Han Yunxi's hand. Then, he walked away without looking back. Hey, what's this? Aren't you going to have a meal with me before you leave? Gu. Old ghost. Gu didn't look back. He waved his hand, "Remember to miss your chi brother. Wait for my good news. Be careful." Han Yunxi chased after him for a few steps, but Gu quickly disappeared. Han Yunxi looked at the wild mushroom in her hand seriously and was shocked. This was a good medicine for women to replenish their blood and energy. It would take at least 500 to 600 years to grow to this size. Han Yunxi looked at it for a long time. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She smiled helplessly. Silly, Han Yunxi didn't give this precious blood mushroom to Mulinger. Instead, she told Su Xiaoyu to keep it in a secret room in the pharmacy. She went to the backyard. Before she even entered the room, Lil Thing pounced at her and let out a shrill cry that resounded through the backyard. Squeak! Han Yunxi immediately covered its mouth. Did Gu Beiyue give you a stimulant? Ever since they came back from the medicine-requesting cave, Lil Thing had been guarding Gu Beiyue. Now, it was finally back in her hands. Inside the room, Long Feiyi heard Lil Thing's voice and was puzzled. What's that mouse called? It should be the Princess Consort. Gu Beiyue knew Lil Thing better than anyone else. Just like Lil Thing, it knew young master better than anyone else. Long Feiyi left without another word. Gu Beiyue smiled faintly. He carefully cleaned up the teacup that Long Feiyi had used. When Han Yunxi carried Lil Thing into the room, she didn't see any trace of Long Feiyi. Greetings to the Princess Consort. Gu Beiyue was always so gentle and modest. Even if he couldn't stand up, he still remained seated in his wheelchair with his hands clasped in front. Han Yunxi always ignored his respect. She sat in Long Fei Ye's former seat and poured herself some tea. Since when did you like drinking tea? In her impression, he'd always been drinking tea by himself when she came to see him. I've got more free time than before, Gu Beiyue smiled. You won't be free from now on, will you? The people who want to make appointments with you can line up all the way out of the city. Han Yunxi smiled back. She always felt so comfortable when she was with him. She couldn't help but smile, and even her fretful heart would calm down in an instant. They'd barely spoken when Lady Hellion and Little Er's voices came from outside. Yunxi, you're here. You made us look for you. Big sis, you're finally back. Is my master back too? It was rare for Gu Beiyue and Han Yunxi to have some alone time together, but Lady Hellion and Little came to find them. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Gu Beiyue's eyes flashed with helplessness, but it was nothing more than helplessness. Very soon, Lady Hellion and Little came in. Lady Hellion was still as beautiful, graceful, and charming as ever. Long time no see, Little He'd grown up. Han Yunxi remembered that when she'd saved him at the Han estate, he was only a 6-year-old child. Now he was almost 10 years old. He wasn't as delicate as before, but his temperament was still clean and clean. Those clear black and white eyes looked even more stubborn than when he was young. As soon as he saw Gu Beiyue in his wheelchair, Han Yunxi almost burst into tears. They all knew about Gu Beiyue's injuries. Gu Beiyue didn't say a word, but called out to him. Han Yunxi sniffled a few times and held back his tears. Master, when will you get better? I'll be fine after resting for more than a month, Gu Beiyue said honestly. Lady Hellion was also very concerned. Dr. Gu, if you need any help, just let me know. Don't be shy. Gu Beiyue responded with a faint smile. This topic was a bit heavy, so Han Yunxi changed the topic. She smiled and said, when did you start calling him master? Dr. Gu officially accepted me as his disciple a long time ago. Big sis, I'm not going to medical school to take the exam. I'll focus on learning from Master and Go when I'm older. Little seemed to have matured a lot. You're sensible now. Come here, let Big Sis give you a hug. Han Yunxi was very happy. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi stood rooted to the ground with an embarrassed expression, and his ears were a little red. Oh, this child knows the difference between men and women. Han Yunxi laughed. Children in ancient times matured early and expressed their feelings in a different way. No wonder Little was shy. Come here, I won't molest you. Don't worry. Han Yunxi smiled and beckoned with her finger. Only then did Little dare to go over. Han Yunxi ruffled his hair and asked, "What rank are you now?" Although he wasn't going to medical school to take the exam, he could still use the medical school's ranking system as a reference. Han Yunxi was about to happily answer when Gu Beiyue said, "A third-rank doctor's ability, including temperament and experience, can barely reach the level of a second-rank doctor. Little remember, medical skills are only a part of being a doctor, not everything. Yes, this disciple will remember your teachings." Little was very obedient. Dr. Gu will be staying in Pill Fiend Pharmacy from now on. You have to learn from him, understand? Not everyone has this opportunity. Han Yunxi said seriously. Little hurriedly said, "Big sis, when I become a divine doctor, I'll also be Pill Fiend Pharmacy's resident doctor, okay? I'll go wherever you want me to go." So you're learning medicine for me? Han Yunxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Han Yunxi was very serious. Of course. Big sis saved Er's life. When grows up, I'll protect big sis. Although Han Yunshi didn't need this kind of protection, when she heard this, she couldn't help but want to pull little into her arms and hug him. It was too heartwarming. Little when you grow up, you have to protect your mother, wife, and children. You're learning medicine because of your talent and interest. You have to learn to cure illnesses and save people. Do you understand? Han Yunshi instructed seriously. Little hesitated for a long time before muttering, then can I protect big sis as well? Of course you can. Han Yunshi readily agreed. However, Mrs. Hulian's eyes didn't have their usual kindness, but were filled with complicated and worried. Chapter 692. If it wasn't for Han Yunshi, Lady Hulian and would have been chased out of the house by Lady Su long ago. The Han family owed Han Yunshi so much, but Han Yunshi still tried her best to protect their most talented son even when she couldn't even protect herself. Lady Hulian admitted that she'd once suspected Han Yunshi and suspected that she was only trying to hold mother and son hostage so she could take the Han family's pharmacopoeia and properties for herself. But Han Yunshi didn't. Everything she did was for the sake of the Han family. She'd spent a lot of effort on and wanted him to become a man of indomitable spirit. She wanted him to shoulder the heavy responsibility of reviving the Han family's pharmacies. Han Yunshi doted on little just as much as his mother herself. Seeing the stubbornness in Er's eyes, Lady Hulian couldn't help but knit her brows. What was Lady Hulian worried about? In the past, when said he wanted to repay his big sister, she'd always praise him for being sensible and teach him not to be ungrateful. But now, she was only filled with worry. She wasn't afraid of anything but losing her son. Thus, there were some things she couldn't control. "Seventh Madam, what are you spacing out for? Come drink some tea." Even though Han Yunshi was the high and mighty Qin Wangfei, she still treated Lady Hulian with respect. In terms of seniority, she really did have to call Hulian Zuixiang, 7th Madam. As soon as Lady Hulian walked over, she pulled into her arms and asked about Han Yunshi's health as usual. Then she told her about the Han family's 4 Directions pharmacy. After chatting for a while, Han Yunshi told Gu Beiyue to rest before they left together. As soon as they stepped out the door, Lady Hulian asked in a low voice, "Yunshi, it's been so many years. Why hasn't there been any movement from your stomach?" Han Yunshi didn't expect this at all. Although she knew many people were concerned about this question, no one had asked her so directly ever since she'd been questioned at Tianning's imperial palace. It should be time for some movement. She muttered to herself. His Highness Duke of Qin doesn't want children. Madame Hulian's voice grew even softer. Han Yunshi smiled. "I'm too busy. I don't have time." "Then when do you want it?" Madame Hulian muttered. "His Highness Duke of Qin isn't young anymore. You don't have any plans for the next year and a half, right?" "I'm busy too." Han Yunshi wasn't making up an excuse. It was the truth. Long Fei Yi was busy, so how could she be free? In 2 days, she had an appointment to save Grand Concubine Yi, and in a few days, she had to prepare to ascend Celestial Mountain. Both were dangerous affairs, but she had been working hard on cultivating her poison storage space, hoping to break through to the 2nd or 3rd level as soon as possible. She hoped to be of help to Long Fei Yi. She didn't even have time to fall in love, so where would she find the time to have children? Thinking of this, Han Yunshi smiled. "What are you laughing at?" Madame Hulian didn't understand. "It's nothing. You guys go ahead. I'll go find Ling Han Yunshi said. But Madame Hulian didn't leave. "Yunshi, there's chaos in the north. You guys won't be leaving this time, right?" South Ning is such a nice place. Don't keep going to dangerous places. I'll go wherever Long Fei Yi goes. There's no danger with him around, Han Yunxi teased. She wouldn't tell anyone else about her trip to Celestial Mountain. A married daughter is like spilled water. Madame Hellion was helpless, but little was delighted. That's right. With His Highness Duke of Qin here, Big Sis won't be in any danger. Mother, don't worry. Yunxi, why don't you come to the Han estate for dinner tonight? Madame Hellion asked. No, I still have things to do tonight. Maybe another day. Han Yunxi tactfully declined. Madame Hellion didn't invite her again, but left with little Mother, you go back first. I'll come back tonight. I have a lot of medical records to show Master, little said seriously. A complicated look flickered past Madame Hellion's eyes before she murmured, why don't you stay at Pill Fiend Pharmacy tonight? Mother will come pick you up tomorrow. Little immediately shook his head. Big Sis Chen Xiang isn't at home. I have to go back to keep you company. Silly child, Mother is going to the temple. I might stay there tonight. Be good and stay with Dr. Gu. Mother will come pick you up tomorrow morning, Madame Hellion said seriously. Mother, why are you staying at the temple? Little didn't understand. In the past, his mother had never stayed out at night. There's a Dharma assembly at the temple tonight. Madame Hellion stroked little head with a smile. How can a child have so many questions? Hurry and go help out at the pharmacy. Little didn't think much of it and skipped towards the pharmacy. Once Master and Big Sis were back, he felt like the world had turned beautiful again. Madame Hellion exhaled and hurried out the door. Su Xiaoyu happened to pass by and glanced at the figure in a daze. She chased after her for a few steps before disappearing around a corner. Madame Hellion. What's the rush? Are you in a hurry to reincarnate? She muttered to herself. Su Xiaoyu also went to the pharmacy and saw Mu Ling personally checking the herbs. Little was helping at the side. Han Yunxi wasn't there. In fact, Han Yunxi had gone back to find Gu Beiyue. She had said that Gu Beiyue wanted to rest to send Madame Hellion and little away. When she returned, Gu Beiyue was still brewing tea. Only her cup was left on the table. Obviously, he knew she would come again. Dr. Gu isn't a counselor but a doctor. What a pity. Han Yunxi joked. It's just that I've been in the palace for so long that I'm used to observing people's expressions. Now I'm more careful, that's all. Gu Beiyue was very modest. Esteemed Wang Fei, do you have something important to discuss? His Highness and I will be going to Celestial Mountain at the beginning of next month. This trip will be quite dangerous. Han Yunxi was very direct. If she and Long Fei Yi could successfully descend the mountain on mid-autumn night, that would be the best. If they couldn't, Gu Beiyue was the person they trusted the most. In fact, Gu Beiyue had already known about the trip to Celestial Mountain because Long Fei Yi had just talked to him when he arrived. His face was full of shock. What? His Highness Duke of Qin is Kenzo's closed-door disciple. Esteemed Wang Fei, did something happen? That's Kenzo's family business. Han Yunxi was silent for a moment, then said seriously, Gu Beiyue, you should be well aware of the War of the Three Kingdoms. The situation at the Commander-in-Chief's manor. Han Yunxi analyzed the situation in detail, including the threat of Northern Li and the strength of the Bailey Navy. Gu Beiyue didn't interrupt her, but listened to her carefully. Esteemed Wang Fei, you've told this one so much. This one. If His Highness and I haven't descended the mountain by mid-autumn, I hope you can assist General Bailey at the Commander-in-Chief's manor. He's a military general, after all, and doesn't understand the ways of politics, Han Yunshi murmured. Gu Beiyue smiled helplessly. Esteemed Wang Fei, this one is only a doctor. A doctor treats the heart, the nation, and the world. I can treat anyone. Han Yunshi's face was serious, her eyes bright. Gu Beiyue, just treat it as me. Before Han Yunshi could finish her sentence, Gu Beiyue cut her off. He never wanted to hear Han Yunshi say that word to him. He didn't like it, nor did he have the right. Yunshi, do you know? Towards you, I can only follow your orders in this lifetime. A doctor treats the heart, the nation, and the world. Yunshi, I only hate that I couldn't treat myself. I couldn't recover my martial arts and protect you. I'm indebted to esteemed Wang Fei for thinking highly of me. If there's a need, this one will definitely do my best to cooperate with General Bailey. Gu Beiyue respectfully bowed with clasped hands. I believe in you. Han Yunshi trusted her own judgment and intuition. The two of them chatted idly until Mu Ling came to find them. You really should rest. I've disturbed you, Han Yunshi said. Gu Beiyue had already grown tired of Mu Ling and Gu Qixu's constant bickering on his way back, so he didn't keep Han Yunshi. Mu Ling was about to enter the room when Han Yunshi pushed her out. Where's Gu? Han Yunshi asked first. Mu Ling rolled her eyes at her. I should be the one asking you. He left. He shouldn't be back anytime soon. You don't have to wait. Han Yunshi spoke honestly. If you have time, go back to Medicine City and tidy up the Mu clan. Don't let Lady Lianxin find you. Mu Ling's bright eyes immediately dimmed. She walked with Han Yunshi into the flower gardens in silence. Before she knew it, she'd hooked her arm around Han Yunshi's. Han Yunshi only glanced at her without a word. After walking for a while, Mu Ling finally spoke. Han Yunshi. What? Why is it so hard to like someone? Tired? Han Yunshi asked. Very tired. Mu Ling replied honestly. It's been so many years. He's always running away, and I'm always chasing after him. I've almost run all over Cloud Realm continent, but I just can't catch him. You won't be tired if you don't like him, right? Actually, Han Yunshi herself didn't understand. You'll die. You'll die if you don't like him. Mu Ling blinked her big, bright eyes with determination. Han Yunshi was speechless. Not to that extent. Will you stop liking the Long Fei Yi one day? Mu Ling asked. I've never thought about it. Han Yunshi didn't even consider this question. You're different from us. Mu Ling hung her head dejectedly, but she still raised it in the end with a proud expression. I'll wait. When he's old, there'll be a day when he can't run anymore. Mu Linger lifted her head to look at the skies, the gentle April sunlight shining down on her clean, stubborn face. Her heart was as firm as gold, her eyes sparkling as her lips quirked up. She was in the prime of her youth and beauty. Gu Ling will wait for you until the end of time. I'll wait until the seas turn blue. I'll wait until prosperity falls. I'll wait until the years are peaceful. But Gu Qixu, when will you grow old? Han Yunshi looked at Mu Ling, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. That's a good idea. I'm serious. Mu Ling said loudly. I know. Han Yunshi nodded repeatedly. Night fell. Before leaving Pill Fiend Pharmacy, Han Yunshi told Su Xiaoyu to give the blood mushroom to Mu Ling. Mistress, this is good stuff. You have to keep it for yourself. Although Su Xiaoyu admired Mu Ling, she still thought of Han Yunshi first. Lord Pill Fiend gave it to her. Take it, Han Yunshi ordered coldly. Su Xiaoyu rubbed her nose and could only do as she was told. Although this wasn't appropriate and was being nosy, Han Yunqi really felt sorry for silly Ling. What girl wasn't silly in the face of love? The only ones who weren't silly were those who had been hurt and no longer believed in love. Seeing Long Feiyi coming over, she restrained her thoughts. She knew that she was often very silly in front of Long Feiyi. On the way back, Han Yunqi tightly held Long Feiyi's hand. 2 days later, they arrived at Lost Void Lake as promised. Chapter 693. Lost Void Lake was a rather mystical place. It was located in the forest north of South Ning County. There was only one path leading to the lake, and it was covered in white fog all year round. Once one stepped in, it was extremely easy to get lost, so it was called the Lost Path. However, as long as one passed through the Lost Path, one would feel as if the clouds had parted to reveal the moon. One could see a strange lake. There was a lake in the lake, and from afar, it seemed like the lake was hollowed out, so it was called the Empty Lake. There were many ferocious beasts in the forest, so people rarely came to this place. Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi rode their horses here, but they dismounted before reaching the Lost Path. It was noon, but the entire forest was gloomy and cold, like an otherworldly place. They saw that both sides of the Lost Path were planted with parasol trees, and there was a straight path in the middle of the trees. The white fog on the path was relatively sparse, and they could barely see the road. On both sides, it was a vast expanse of white, like a sea of clouds. Along the way, Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi talked about the strange scenery here. Han Yunqi paid attention. She activated the detoxification system from afar, but it did not detect any poison. Nature was great and awe-inspiring. Many natural phenomena could not be explained. Han Yunqi stood at the intersection. After confirming that the fog was not poisonous, she enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the Lost Path with great interest. It's too despicable to find such a place. She sneered. The robbers would definitely set up an ambush on the Lost Path. Long Feiyi held her hand, their fingers intertwined tightly. He said in a low voice, "Be careful. Don't worry, leave this part of the road to me." Han Yunqi liked the white fog too much. She took out 2 pills, one for herself and the other for Long Feiyi. Then she held Long Feiyi's hand tightly. "Long Feiyi, I'll protect you on this part of the road. Do you trust me?" "I do." Long Feiyi knew that Han Yunqi used poison. The path was long, and there must be many ambushes. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light. He had originally planned to spend a long time on this path. Now that Han Yunqi had made her move, he could rest assured. Even Jun Yixia, who came from the 100 Poisons sect, could not escape from Han Yunqi's poison. Who else in this world could be lucky enough to survive her poison? They really had to thank the person who chose this place. Otherwise, a powerful poison master like Han Yunqi would be useless. The two of them held hands, and their figures were quickly submerged in the white fog. How much did Long Feiyi trust Han Yunqi? Other than holding her hand tightly, he was very relaxed. It was as if he was not here to negotiate but to take a stroll. Han Yunqi was the same as him, relaxed and content. She had absolute confidence in her poison techniques, not because she was conceited, but because she was confident. At first, the surroundings were silent, but soon, waves of wails could be heard. There was no doubt that the ambushing assassins had been poisoned by Han Yunqi, and the poison was taking effect. "What poison?" Long Feiyi asked. "The most common poison for abdominal pain." Han Yunqi smiled. "Not ruthless enough." Long Feiyi gave an objective evaluation. "There is no antidote for this poison. It must be in continuous pain for 3 days and 3 nights before it can detoxify itself. Moreover, this kind of pain is not painful enough to kill people. Han Yunxi asked jokingly, why don't you give it a try? No need. Long Fei Yi was very serious, but he still gave an objective evaluation, living a life worse than death. Very good. In fact, he thought that once this woman's poison techniques were put to use, it would be a fatal blow. Han Yunxi saw Long Fei Ye's cold and solemn expression and couldn't help but laugh. Long Fei Ye's hand immediately tightened, but Han Yunxi continued to laugh. Long Fei Yi didn't say anything and pulled Han Yunxi into his embrace, pressing her face against his chest. Han Yunxi's face was almost squashed, and she couldn't laugh at all. Although the white fog was everywhere, they could still barely see the road ahead. Han Yunxi had dealt with the ambushing assassins, and Long Fei Yi was responsible for leading the way in a straight line. At this time, at the end of the path, by the empty lake, 2 women were standing side by side, one old and one young. One was dressed in white like a fairy, the other in black like a demon. They were both looking at the path with serious expressions. Why is there no news at all? The young woman was clearly anxious. What's the rush? This madam has set up an inescapable net. Even if the old Kenzo came, he might not be able to walk out. The old woman in black said coldly. You've made it clear. Only kill Han Yunxi. Don't hurt the Qin Emperor. The young woman said again. Don't worry. The old woman in black was a little impatient. The young woman was still worried and added, I'll say the ugly words first. If your people hurt the Qin Emperor, you won't get a single penny. The old woman ignored her, and she continued, also, if you can't kill Han Yunxi, you won't get a single penny. Let's make a deal. The old woman snorted disdainfully. Just as she was about to speak, a female assassin in black suddenly rolled out of the white fog. She rolled a few times before stopping and falling at the old woman's feet. She clutched her stomach, her face covered in cold sweat. She had risked her life to escape here and deliver the news. At this time, she didn't even have the strength to lie down, let alone stand. Madam, we've all been poisoned. What? The young woman was shocked. The old woman was also in disbelief. All poisoned. How is that possible? The newcomer was Long Fei Yi, one of the top experts in Cloud Realm Continent's martial arts world. Han Yunxi's poison skills couldn't be underestimated either, so the old woman naturally wouldn't be her love rival. She had hidden a total of 30 assassins in the maze, and all of them were elites. How could they be wiped out before the battle even started? What kind of situation was this? Even if Han Yunxi had poisoned them, wouldn't she have had to wait until the assassin group showed up before she had the chance? Where did she get the ability to cripple the entire assassin group in such a short period of time? Sisters, they're still in the forest. Their stomachs feel like they're being cut by knives, and they can't move, the assassin reported truthfully. Could it be that Han Yunxi poisoned the fog? The old woman muttered to herself. She thought that if this woman wasn't eliminated, she would definitely cause endless trouble in the future. Her poison skills were almost on par with Bai Yanqing's. That damned slut, the young woman raged. Madame Langyu, what do you think we should do? That's right, this old woman in black was none other than the city lord of the City of Daughters and Bai Yanqing's subordinate, Madame Langyu. She could be considered someone who had seen much of the world, so she remained calm. What's the rush? The reason the maze is called a maze isn't as simple as the white fog obscuring the vision. You mean? The young woman didn't understand. Madame Langyu was the one who chose the location of the Lost Void Lake. The maze is protected by the art of divination. Even if there's no ambush, it won't be easy for them to walk out. Madame Langyu sneered. They should be walking into the array by now. One had to know that the reason she was loyal to Bai Yanqing was because she had been trapped in the maze for 10 whole days. She had bitterly endured the cold and hunger, and when her life had been hanging by a thread, Bai Yanqing had saved her. She owed Bai Yanqing her life, and after learning that Bai Yanqing was the sect master of the 100 Poison sect, she had been loyal to him wholeheartedly ever since. Bai Yanqing had helped her a lot when she became the city lord of the City of Daughters. Bai Yanqing didn't know anything about divination, but he had his own tricks to get out of the maze. After that incident, Madame Leng Yu hired a specialized Taoist priest to break the array of the maze and took over the Lost Void Lake. Therefore, she could easily set up an assassin group in the maze. Divination, the young woman murmured. She was finally relieved. Don't worry. Let them have some fun first. It won't be too late for me to make a move later. Madame Leng Yu was already so old, but she was even more frivolous than the younger generation. All right. When the time comes, you'll personally kill Han Yunxi. Then, bring the Duke of Qin to me. The young woman sneered. At this moment, Han Yunxi had already sensed that something was wrong. She pulled Long Feiyi back and stopped. Long Feiyi, wait. We just passed by this place. Long Feiyi didn't understand. The path is straight. There's only one path, and there are trees on both sides. If they walked into the forest on both sides, they might get lost. However, he had been very clear-headed the entire time, so he didn't get lost. There's definitely something wrong with this place. Han Yunxi whispered. Just now, about 20 steps to our right, there was a poison person. Her poison level was 3, and there were 2 poison people beside her. Their poison levels were 4 and 5 respectively. On our left, about 15 steps away, there were 2 poison people. One of them had poison levels of 6, and the other had poison levels of 8. Once the poison level reaches 3, they won't have the strength to move anymore. With Han Yunxi's explanation, Long Feiyi understood. Han Yunxi had used the position of the objects as a reference to determine their location. In that case, they had indeed returned to the place they had just passed. The Chimenduinjia Formation. Long Feiyi muttered to himself. There really is such a thing. Han Yunxi actually had her suspicions, but she didn't dare to believe it. She didn't know this thing. What should she do now? Long Feiyi, do you know? Someone will know. Where's the closest assassin to us? Long Feiyi whispered. Han Yunxi immediately knew what he wanted to do. Since the assassins could hide in the maze, they must know the knack of this place. Soon, Han Yunxi used the detoxification system to determine the position of the closest assassin to them. They followed the direction indicated by the detoxification system, but who knew that after walking about 10 steps, the detoxification system notified them that the assassin had moved. Han Yunxi stopped abruptly. He's gone. Impossible. That assassin's poison level is 8. He doesn't even have the strength to crawl. It's not that he moved. We're going in the wrong direction. In the Chimenduinjia Formation, the position is constantly changing. Because the position was constantly changing, they couldn't see it, so they were always going in the wrong direction. Han Yunxi pondered over this principle and muttered, so, as long as we can determine the position, we can get out. The positions of all the objects here change as we move. How can we be sure? Long Feiyi's eyes flashed with worry. He pondered over how to deal with it. Before coming here, he had learned about this place, but he didn't know that there was an array hidden in the maze. Since there was an array hidden, it meant that this place was under someone's control. Seeing the dignified look in Long Feiyi's eyes, Han Yunxi gently stroked his brows. Don't think about it. I said that I'll protect you on this journey. Just follow me without worry. You have a way. Long Fei Yi was very surprised. Han Yunqi had given him too many surprises, but based on her performance just now, she didn't understand the Chimen Duanja formation. This woman, what method did she have? Chapter 694. What could Han Yunqi do? She surveyed her surroundings, carefully observing the density of the fog and the direction of the wind. The mysterious expert who saved Jun Yixia on Fishery Island could create a large patch of poisonous fog out of thin air. Han Yunqi didn't have this ability. However, in this white fog, she could effortlessly create a patch of poisonous fog. A woman who was serious was truly beautiful. Although Long Fei Yi didn't understand Han Yunqi's thoughts, he didn't disturb her. He looked at Han Yunqi as if he was admiring a treasure. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Han Yunqi was so serious that she didn't notice how affectionate Long Fei Yi's gaze was. She concocted a poison from the detoxification system and scattered it on the ground. The smell of the poison quickly spread. It was as unbearable as the stench of her feet. Long Fei Yi covered his nose. What's this? Han Yunqi pulled him back. Wait, a guide will be here soon. A guide? Was Han Yunqi using the poison to lure something over to lead the way? However, Long Fei Yi still couldn't figure it out. What could lead the way? The only way to find out was to wait. In the fog, the smell of the poison spread quickly. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi both covered their noses. They stared at the poison on the ground and waited in silence. At this moment, Madame Lang Yu and the young woman were also waiting by the side of the empty lake. The young woman didn't have any patience at all. She started to urge Madame Lang Yu again. How long do we have to wait? Aren't you free to enter and leave? Why don't you go and kill Han Yunqi yourself? Madame Lang Yu didn't even look at the young woman. She said coldly, there's poison in the fog. If you want to die, go ahead. Do we have to keep waiting like this? What if the poison never disappears? The young woman asked again. Wait for them to beg for mercy. Wait for Han Yunqi to hand over the antidote. Madame Lang Yu kept staring at the maze. She had come here specifically to deal with the Duke of Qin, but she hadn't expected Han Yunqi to be even more difficult to deal with than the Duke of Qin. Of course, she didn't expect the woman beside her to be so impatient and stupid. Beg for mercy. The young woman mumbled to herself. Suddenly, she became excited. Good. I'll wait. I want Han Yunqi to beg me, and I want the Duke of Qin to beg me. All of the young woman's restlessness and anxiety vanished, to be replaced by excitement and agitation. As soon as she thought of Han Yunqi begging for mercy and the Duke of Qin begging her for mercy, she was so moved that her blood vessels flared. Every pore on her body was tingling with excitement. He couldn't wait for that moment to arrive. At this time, Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi had already gotten the answer they wanted. They saw a large cloud of black fog flying out from the white fog. It didn't move very quickly, but moved slowly. If this was before he met Han Yunqi, Long Fei Yi would have thought the black fog was a poisonous fog, but ever since he'd gone with Han Yunqi to deal with the poison mosquito swarms, Long Fei Yi's horizons had widened. This wasn't a poisonous fog, but a swarm of poisonous mosquitoes. When the mosquito swarm drew near, Long Fei and Han Yunqi both heard a buzzing sound. The swarm pounced on the ground and swallowed up the poison on the ground. They were frantically trying to eat the poison. You want them to lead the way? Long Fei Yi still didn't understand. When Han Yunqi had been kidnapped by Jun Yixia, she'd used the mosquito swarm as a guide to lure him and Chu Shifeng to find her. But in today's situation, would the mosquitoes be able to break through the maze after eating the poison? What's so special about this poison? It was already pretty good that Long Fei-yi could guess this much. Han Yunshi admired him in her heart, but purposely kept him in suspense. With a smile, she asked, Long Fei-yi, you don't believe me? Long Fei-yi's mouth twitched. I do, he said, but didn't ask any more questions. Han Yunshi turned around and laughed. Between her and Long Fei-yi, it was always Long Fei-yi who took the lead. It was rare for her to show off her strength. Long Fei-yi knew she was laughing, but pretended not to hear a thing. Suddenly, the poisonous mosquito swarm on the ground flew up and flew toward their left like sharp arrows. Long Fei-yi, hurry, chase after them. Han Yunshi shouted. She'd added another type of poison to the poison that attracted the mosquitoes. Once ingested, they'd become unbearably thirsty. After eating this poison, the first thing the mosquitoes did was search for a water source. Although humans were primates, they couldn't compare to low-level animals in certain aspects. After the maze was an empty lake. Although Han Yunshi didn't know why there wasn't any fog, she was certain that the humidity there wouldn't be lower than in the maze. The mosquitoes could use the humidity to pinpoint the direction of a water source. They didn't have thoughts, only instinct. No matter how the maze changed directions, it wouldn't affect their judgment. Sometimes, humans made mistakes because they were too smart. Long Fei-yi wrapped an arm around Han Yunshi's waist and used his lightness techniques to chase after the mosquitoes. Seeing the mosquitoes enter the forest and deviate from the maze, Long Fei-yi didn't hesitate to chase after them. Believe it or not, Han Yunshi, he always used his actions to show his trust. After entering the forest, a magical thing happened. The thick white fog in the forest suddenly became sparse. They chased after the mosquitoes, but they didn't know how it happened, but they returned to the maze's main path. The mosquitoes continued to fly forward along the maze. Not long after, it turned into a forest filled with white fog in front of them. They could only vaguely see a mass of black in front of them. If they continued chasing, the risk of getting lost was not small. Long Fei-yi did not hesitate as he increased his speed. However, after passing through the forest, they returned to the maze. They could vaguely see the end of the maze in front of them. It was a lush green area. Long Fei-yi, we're out of the array. Han Yunshi was overjoyed. She explained the principle behind how the mosquitoes found a water source in one breath. Long Fei-yi's final question was finally answered. He didn't praise her and directly rewarded her by placing a kiss on Han Yunshi's forehead. From now on, this prince will protect you. His lips pressed against Han Yunshi's ear. His voice was deep and magnetic. It was so sexy that it could explode. Okay. Han Yunshi's voice softened. Long Fei tightened his grip on Han Yunshi's waist and unsheathed his sword. He moved with the sword as fast as an arrow, quickly catching up to the poison mosquito swarm and following closely behind. When Han Yunshi was protecting Long Fei-yi did not close his eyes. However, when Long Fei-yi was protecting Han Yunshi, she leaned against his chest with her eyes closed, completely relaxed. She didn't know how much Long Fei-yi trusted Han Yunshi, but Han Yunshi absolutely trusted Long Fei-yi. Madame Lang Yu and the young woman were still waiting. Suddenly, the young woman exclaimed, Madame Lang Yu, look. What's that? Madame Lang Yu had already seen it. She saw a large cloud of black fog flying over from the maze. It was so fast that it looked like it was going to drown everything. Madame Lang Yu was dumbstruck. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Is that poisonous fog? The young woman asked anxiously. No, it's Han Yunshi. Madame Lang Yu muttered to herself. She hadn't seen this scene in a long time, but it was also too familiar. Back when she was trapped in a formation, Bai Yanqing had also accidentally entered the formation and bumped into her. Bai Yanqing had used this kind of poisonous fog to break the maze formation. This poisonous fog was not fog, but a swarm of mosquitoes. She didn't expect Han Yunxi to be so capable at such a young age. Her poison skills must be far superior to Jun Yixie's. She might even be able to contend against Bai Yanqing. Who was this girl's master? Was she more powerful than Bai Yanqing? Did Bai Yanqing know about this? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? It's just poisonous fog. It's normal for poisonous fog to appear in this godforsaken place, the young woman said unhappily. It's Han Yunxi. They've come out. Madame Lang Yu drew her long sword and went on guard. How is that possible? How can Han Yunxi know the art of divination? The young woman was furious. It was as if Han Yunxi couldn't know the art of divination. She huffed and said, Madame Lang Yu, don't panic at the sight of poison. Han Yunxi's poison skills are powerful, but... Before she could finish her sentence, she heard a buzzing sound. She was shocked and turned to look. At the same time, Madame Lang Yu leaped into the air. The young woman saw a dense swarm of poisonous mosquitoes pouncing towards her. She wanted to escape, but she was so shocked that she couldn't move her limbs. All she could do was scream. Ah! Ah! The swarm of mosquitoes swallowed her whole, but they didn't hurt her. Instead, they flew past her and into the lake. Scared to death, the young woman covered her face with her hands and screamed with all her might. Ah! Ah! What are you screaming for? Are you trying to summon your soul? Her voice wasn't loud, just as weak as the other women's voices. But it had an aura that couldn't be ignored. The young woman's screams came to an abrupt halt as she realized she hadn't been attacked by the mosquitoes. She wasn't dead. She came to her senses and immediately lowered her hands, only to see Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi standing in front of her. To be more precise, it was Han Yunxi who stood in front of her, while Long Feiyi stood behind her. Han Yunxi's face was cold. You were the one who kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi. The young woman jumped in fright and subconsciously backed up a few steps, narrowly avoiding falling into the lake. Fortunately, she used her sword to prop herself up. Lady Lang Yu suddenly flew over from the side and pulled the young woman aside, putting some distance between her and Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi. His actions were swift and decisive, and his speed was admirable. Only then did the young woman recover her senses. She lowered her voice and asked, Long Feiyi, I told you to come alone. Why did you bring her with you? Han Yunxi was very familiar with the feeling of being ignored. She looked at the young woman from head to toe, but her face was covered with a veil and her voice had been deliberately altered. She couldn't recognize her. The only thing she was certain of was that this woman knew them. The young woman ignored Han Yunxi, but Long Feiyi ignored her even more. He didn't even look at the young woman, but at Lady Lang Yu. Lady Lang Yu, your lordship wants to discuss a business deal with you, how about it? Let's hear it. Lady Lang Yu was very calm. Kill this woman, Long Feiyi got straight to the point. The young woman grew alarmed. Long Feiyi, don't you want to see your Mufei? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.